With that, I am going to call this special city council workshop for Tuesday, June 12th, 2018 to order. And let the record show that the entire council, with the exception of Mr. Johnson, is present. And we're going to get started with our discussion items. And the first thing on our workshop agenda is DS 18-045, which is to receive a street maintenance fee briefing. And Mr. David Olson, Mr. Ron Olson will get started, then Mr. David Olson.
All right, thank you, Mayor. I just want to create some context for the discussion items that we're going to be having tonight, the first two of them anyway. Part of the responsibility that I have under the charter is to keep the city council advised about the condition of the city and particularly about the financial condition of the city. That's specific language in our charter. So we're going to talk tonight about street maintenance fees and street maintenance requirements. And a good portion of what we're talking about here is my obligation to keep you advised of the condition of the city. And we're not going to be asking you to make decisions about a street maintenance fee tonight, other than at the end of the presentation, we want to know if you want to talk about it more. And you'll see as we go through the presentation, if you want to discuss it further, we've got to do some engineering study. And we've got to get going on that. If you don't want to talk about it further, it'll basically end here tonight, and we'll move on to doing what we need to do with the budget for fiscal 19. The same thing is going to be true of aviation. I'll say it now. This is to advise you of the condition of the aviation fund, its trend, where it's heading, and what the options are that the city council will need to consider. We're going to be doing another one of these when we deal with the capital improvements plan, which will be coming up, an initial briefing on that next week. And we'll try to cover all of the big ticket items, all of the big ticket strategic items that are going to impact this year's budget before I have to finalize the budget by the end of July to present to you the 1st of August. So that's kind of the reason we're talking about these things. And with that, I'm going to turn it to David to go through the background and the conditions of our streets and the potential of a street maintenance fee.
All right, before you get started, we got a question from one of our council members, Mrs. Nash King.
Mr. Olson, I know it's information, but can we ask questions so we can get some clarity to see if we do want to move forward?
Yes.
Because I have some.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, of course we can.
Okay.
I just want to make it clear that on neither of these issues are we asking for final decisions
Correct.
tonight. This is the beginning of a discussion that we'll carry on as long as we need to make sure all of your questions are answered tonight and into the future.
Yes, thank you. Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
All right, Mr. Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As Mr. Olson did say, this is a briefing that is going to provide you a little bit of information about street maintenance funding. Be mindful that the thought you want to keep in your head as we go through this presentation is whether or not you would like to consider evaluating a street maintenance fee. It's not asking for the final decision on street maintenance fees. However, we are asking for the decision of whether you would care to evaluate the possibility of a street maintenance fee. Just a little bit of background information. The city of Killeen has 2,191 lane miles. A lane mile is what you would consider to be a 12-foot wide stretch of pavement that's 1 mile long of roadway. We quantify this so that multi-lane roadways aren't counted the same as say, a 2-lane local roadway. We have 98 signalized intersections. These are traffic signals, red lights that you might say, 65 school flashers, and then numerous alleys, sidewalks, driveways, signs, and other appurtenances. In the City of Killeen Street Operations Division, Public Works has 56 full-time employees. and a fiscal year 18 operating budget of $4.6 million. So what you see in front of you here is some numbers from fiscal year 16, 17, and 18. Just kind of gives you a summary of how those expenditures are broken out. What I will point out is you'll notice that under the maintenance and repairs line item, you do see a little bit higher of a dollar amount than what you're used to hearing. However, that maintenance and repairs amount includes things like vehicle maintenance. It includes things such as building maintenance for the buildings that we're housed in, and those types of things, along with a street maintenance dollar amount. A good example we'll point out in the adopted fiscal year 2018 budget, there are $300,000 towards street maintenance, and the other $685 in that maintenance and repairs goes towards facilities, vehicles, things that have to be present for us to operate. What you'll see on this next slide is a pavement deterioration curve. You see these on various lengths of time. This particular curve shows a 16-year pavement life. What I like to point out with this graph is that you notice that in the first 12 years, that's 75% of the street's life, you see about a 40% drop in the quality. And then in the next 4 years, which is another 12% of the life of that street, you see another 40% drop in quality. So what that tells us and what that demonstrates for us is that if we don't address the maintenance issues on the front end when these streets are still in fairly good shape, that the deterioration starts to happen very rapidly as we get further and further out. The other thing to point out here too is that in that first part of the curve, the first 75% of the life, you may spend $1 towards maintenance. That same dollar turns into $4 to $5 when you get into that further reach of maintenance. What you'll see on the next slide here is the same type of pavement deterioration graph, but it shows simply the types of treatments that we apply during those lifespans. You'll recall recently we just passed a contract. We entered into a contract for Reclamite treatment. That's a surface treatment. And that treatment spans between the top two bars there, your blue and green bar. That is taking our streets that are in good shape and trying to make them last longer. We talked about it before. It adds about 5 to 7 years to the life of that street. So you extend that good period of your street by another 5 to 7 years, adding that treatment. If you wait till you get down into the darker colored yellow or red zone there, you get into more of a reconstruction standpoint. It's very expensive. It's very inconvenient for the citizens in that area because it does cause a lot more road closure, a lot more downtime for that street, and it's much more expensive. City of Killeen stands in about the 80 range on average. However, we do have streets that fall into all of these categories that you see on the board here. This is the same type of information, however, it's shown in a tabular format. What I'll point out on this slide is it shows a remaining life in that fourth column there. What you would see there is just an estimated how much longer, if you did nothing at all from that point forward, how long could you go? And you see that early on, we're in 15 to 25 years. A little bit of that depends on the standards. We like to call it a 20-year average. And then as you get down to the bottom, even when you get into the reconstruction phase, when a road is absolutely terrible, it can continue to go on for some period of time before it becomes absolutely undrivable. But you will get numerous complaints during that time period, and it can be dangerous to drive a posted speed limit at that time.
Mr. Mayor, could I ask a question?
Question, Mrs. Fleming?
Let me ask a question. When it gets down to the yellow, right, to the critical condition, shouldn't somebody go in there and put that top level down then before it gets down to the red? Wouldn't that save a lot of money rather than to let it go all the way down?
That does save a lot of money, and if you'll recall earlier, we showed the graph where we had the first 75% of the life. When you get to that yellow period, that is the turning point between the relatively flat curve and then where it starts to drop off very steep.
Right.
So depending on what piece of the curve you're at there, it can, the lower end of that yellow area is a little expensive. The upper end is still pretty manageable. But things like a Cape Seal or an overlay, those are fairly expensive treatments still.
Mr. Rivera?
David, you're probably going to cover this later, just let me know. Let's talk about Rosewood. You got Rosewood maintenance, okay? Then you talk about the street where I live in, inside residential area. The life expectation got to be different.
The larger the street, the larger the pavement section, that means it's thicker. So it does cost more money to rebuild a Rosewood versus rebuilding something inside of a residential neighborhood. But what we'll see, and that actually segues great into this next slide.
Okay,
On average, what we see based on the study that was performed in 2013 is that we need to spend approximately $900 per lane mile per year. That doesn't mean that every lane mile of street is going to get $900 worth of treatment every year. But what it does mean is that if we budget for that amount and we budget for $900 per lane mile, as those things come into their schedule, then they can be addressed. So what this table here lays out for you is going back to 13 when we did our Transmap study. It shows what the recommended funding was at that time. What you see in your second column there is the number of lane miles that we had at that time, and that goes through 2018, the number of lane miles that we have now. The recommended funding would be, if we were to fund that at $900 per lane mile, and then the budgeted funding is what was actually budgeted for that year. Then your far right-hand column shows you the actual per lane mile dollar amount that we budgeted on any given year. And you take note on our best year, which was 2014, we funded just over 50% of the need for that street maintenance funding.
Mr. Harris?
Yeah, two questions. I'll ask this one first, though, since you're on that one. What happened between 2014 and 2015 that, we were doing well in 2014, and all of a sudden, 2015, we just kind of...
I honestly don't know. That was before my time here. But I expect that there was probably an expenditure that needed to be incurred elsewhere, and that was the easy cut.
Okay. And the second question is, back to the previous slide. How many streets, if you know, how many streets do we have in the bottom three, as far as the color coding there? How many estimated streets do we have in the bottom three, and then how many, if you know specifically, do we have that are in the red?
In the red, it's actually a fairly low amount. We're talking 2 to 3% of our streets that are in that red condition. When we look at these bottom three, we're down to probably, give or take, 30% in that category. These are general numbers. Keep in mind, the study does lay those out, and we can provide you with a copy of that study if you would like. But again, that was also 2013 numbers, and a street will degrade on average about 2 points per year.
Can you name one of the streets that are in the red?
Well, if you look at particularly Watercrest is one that's in pretty bad shape.
Yeah, it is.
Gilmer Road, actually right here. We just did some cold mix application to that because it was not safe to drive on. So it's still not pretty, but at least it's safe enough to drive up and down right now. But Gilmer is in this red section now, and it needs to be reconstructed. Those are the only two I can think of off the top of my head, but there are a couple of others as well.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Mr. Kilpatrick?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The slide we were just looking at, pass this one. Okay, looking at the physical year lane miles, it looks like about 250 lane miles picked up from 13 to 18. What are we projecting from 18 to 24? If we're using a five
Right. We've seen about, that's about an average growth for us, and all of the lane miles that we've added, Most of the lane miles we've added, I'll say, are new subdivisions. Some of that is a better accounting system. We've gotten a little bit better over the course of the last 5 years at knowing exactly what we have and making sure that we're accounting for it properly. So some of the growth that you see in there is artificial in that we had it before, we just didn't have it on the list properly,
So that's looking at about 50 lane miles per year
give or take.
that we would be picking up. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I have another question, I'm sorry.
Mrs. Fleming.
I'm sorry, I hate to keep asking questions, but this just came into my mind. Now, when you do a needs assessment for the roads that really do need your attention, right? So you mentioned Watercrest and Gilmore. So when you start or getting the funds to do this, they should be first priority, right? David, am I correct or wrong or what?
Not completely correct. What you see in that case is when a road gets to the complete failure point,
Okay.
it's very expensive to repair. So in a year where, say, you have a certain dollar amount of funding,
Okay,
you could either repair one road or a piece of a road like Watercrest, or you could repair 20 roads elsewhere in the city. So it's a balancing act of repairing worst first, and at the same time, not allowing our street system to continue to degrade. So what we would like to see in that kind of case is a capital maintenance plan that would be rebuilding roads. and
so
preventative
you will
maintenance
have
plan.
to rebuild both these roads, right? You don't know which one's the worst,
Yes,
sir?
ma'am.
Okay.
I think it's important to understand this, in terms of budgeting and managing the city, we think in two terms. One is maintenance, and the other is capital. So if these roads are anything above red, well, maybe the yellow, let's say anything above red, they're operational. So we can rehabilitate them by doing something less than reconstructing them. Once they get to the reconstruction level, we're not talking about operating money that fixes them. Now we're talking about capital money. Now we got to go borrow several $1 million in order to rebuild the street. So I think it would help the council to think about that in two ways. One is operations and one is capital. Once you drop into the red, you're talking capital. Anything before the red, you're talking operations.
And if I can just add, I remember when this came out in 2013, with this recommendation for us to budget at least the $2 million, at that time, we were budgeting at least $750,000, so we weren't close to what was the recommendation. And now, after this presentation back in 2013, we budget, how much, like $250,000? So we've gone backwards. And so this is one of the areas that has taken one of the biggest cuts, because we had to cut a lot. And I think that over long term, if we don't take action on this here soon, it's going to hurt us, because the price tag just keeps going up and up.
You're going to pass on a legacy problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Kilpatrick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and to tab on that, that's what I was looking at. If we look at 2018, and we check the lane mileage going out, 2018, we should be funding 1.9 million. In 2023, we should be funding 2.2 million. And each year, it just keeps exceeding that rapidly.
And we budget less.
If we continue this 300,000, 250, 400,000, we're going to have in that bottom three categories that Councilman Harris was talking about, instead of having a 20-25%, we're going to have 40 to 45% down in that area.
And I might add that assumes that the cost of maintenance remains at $900 a mile, which you know it's not going to. It is going to go up as well.
Sir, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Rivera.
One of the things that I can see if we don't take any action at all is the amount of street that we have. Instead of fixing a bunch right here, we're going to have a bundle at one time. So we need to make sure we got enough money year after year so we could cover that amount of street at that specific time, because there got to be some type of block of street that we need to do before we go up to next year. If we don't do nothing this year, or 19, 20, it's going to double.
Yeah.
And that's my concern.
Mr. Menke.
Yeah, I think it's pretty obvious we've probably outrun our street supply line. In other words, I think we've run miles of road, which is great, but I don't know if we've always taken into account, what's going to be the revenue generated by that mile of road to possibly cover the amount that that road's going to ultimately cost. And, I mean, you can do that some and kind of know that the growth is going to happen, but you can't quantify it. And I think, it may have been a situation where we've been running roads and kind of got to the point where, now it's time to pay for them, and we didn't really have the revenue from the miles that were laid in order to cover that cost. So that's something that's.
And I hate to sound like a broken record here, but as of today, we've heard like 3 different items, between our council meeting and here, that we're looking for revenue for. We're talking
I
about the
agree.
senior, the police, and I just want to remind the council that in 2 different occasions, we've come together, you guys come together, and we prioritize what we want as a council. So as we hear all this different thing, remember that I think the number 1 priority was infrastructure. And I think when you were talking about infrastructure, you were thinking about this very thing right here. So, Mr. Kilpatrick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last thing to tie on to the last 3 comments. Another thing we have to consider in the future right now is the roads that we're going to inherit as we go south are county roads. And we'll take them in the condition that a county road says a road should be. They will not meet our standards. So as we see right now on East Tremere, what we're going to have to pay for that. Well, now as we go down to county roads as we further south toward the Lampasas River, a lot of county roads are going to be brought in, and they are no culverts, no drainage, no shoulders, no curbing whatsoever. That we will inherit those, and that's, of course, it's in rebuilding, but the maintenance of those, once we get them done, though, is going to jack that price up too, and probably even greater, as the city manager said, than $900 per lane mile.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Harris.
And I'll say this even, in response to Councilmember Minkings, like you said about the building roads without considering the revenue, and that's what, Mr. Olson had confirmed, that a lot of times we did things without figuring out how we're going to pay for it in the long run and so forth, so that is the issue. But even as Kilpatrick mentioned about inheriting roads in the future, in undeveloped areas right now, and so forth, then, of course, this could be, this is one of the, the proposed solutions for street maintenance and stuff and so forth, and taking care of those things. But at the same time, I have to mention impact fees, because by the time we inherit something, impact fees will have kicked in by then.
Ms. Fleming?
I just wanted to agree with Councilman Harris, because a year ago, we brought out impact fees, and if we had went ahead and voted on this and went ahead, I know it takes a year for the impact fees to get ahead, we would be ahead of ourselves right now. So I think we really need to consider impact fees right now before we even bring in all this street maintenance and everything. I know it's important, and I know city managers brought this up, but both of them are important. And I think we really do need to consider the impact fees. I really do. Thank you.
Mayor, may I comment
Mr.
on
Olson.
that? We are hopefully scheduled to bring a capital improvement program discussion to the council within the next meeting or 2. And as we talk about that, as David comes in and lays out this plan, we're going to be identifying projects that need to be done, and we're going to be identifying funding sources for those projects. That is actually the perfect time to begin a discussion about impact fees. Impact fees are associated with capital, not operations. It's very important that the council understand that. So as we have a discussion about the capital projects program, it's a perfect time to start a discussion about impact fees. But I would hate it, I would admonish you not to get confused about impact fees and operational fees. Those 2 things are completely separate. And so as we talk about a street maintenance fee, that's an operational fee, please keep in mind those 2 things are not the same. They are totally different from each other.
Mr. Rivera.
And I couldn't agree more with you. And I think last time we had a conversation, I said, we need to bring both at the same time. That way, when we speak about one, we could identify what we're speaking about instead of being one specific fee, because I'll be honest, nobody want to hear this. We got to get revenue, some type of fee, unless we decide to go to the blood center of every department and drain those departments out. But we need to discuss those two, impact fee and maintenance fees together.
You agree?
They go hand to hand.
Mr. Harris, I saw Mr. Harris after.
Oh, actually, I was going to say, first, because I understand the difference between the two, but I was just actually going to say what Mr. Rivera said. I mean, and I'm in complete agreement with him, because that's what we agreed to, that we would bring them together. And because remember, I just agree with what he said. What he said was 100% correct. I think we should present them both together in contrast, and I think people will be able to understand when you put them side by side what they both are, when they come side by side in comparison or in contrast, rather than just going straight to the, gosh, I forgot the word I was looking for, what word did you use again? As far as,
Operations or capital?
yeah, capital. Instead of going to that and just addressing it separately, so people won't forget about this one over here. So put them both together, let people have it side by side, they'll be able to make a decision on either one or the other, or both, and we can go on from there. But I think that would promote a greater understanding to the citizens about what they both are and how they both operate, because I'll say this one thing here. Like I said, this is an option. And, this may be an option that may have to happen. And, as far as the discussion, and I'll go ahead and say it early, I mean, I'll be for, allowing it to go move forward for discussion, because I believe in allowing stuff to be moved forward for discussion so citizens can get information regarding it as much as they possibly can. Like I said, but at the same time, even as, I remember somebody said, I think the last week, somebody said something about, as long as it takes for the impact fees to kick in, we might as well not do it. But same thing today was mentioned, it takes 9 months for officers to go through training and get hired, so should we not do that either? But the thing is, even as Ms. Fleming said, if we had done this years ago when we should have, we talked about it enough, this should have been implemented by now, then we would have already had that revenue coming in. But as I said, 100% agree with Councilman Rivera, these two things need to be brought up at the same time.
All right. Mrs. Nash King. You good? Anybody else? Okay. Mr. Olson, good discussion here.
All right. Just to clarify, the way, the line I always like to draw is you put maintaining roads on one side, that's just doing minor things to make it better. A new road is something you use an impact fee on, a street maintenance fee, transportation utility fee, any of those type of fees can be used for maintenance of roadways. That means that you have a road and it needs to be fixed. So even if you had a Watercrest Road that needs to be completely rebuilt, an impact fee does not rebuild that roadway. Even though it is capital, it's an existing road that has to be rebuilt. It cannot be rebuilt by an impact fee. So that's the one
Mrs.
clarification
Nash
I would
King.
like to.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Olson, the capital improvement plan, when Mr. Kirkpatrick and also Ms. Clemens was talking about the county roads, would that fall up under that?
We look out through our capital improvement plan 5 years, and we'll have a little more information about it next Tuesday.
Okay.
We're going to give you that initial briefing, but it's a 5-year plan.
All right, thank you.
Okay, another Mr. Harris.
Oh, yeah. I think it's a pretty good question, actually. It just came to mind. Will if impact fees are implemented, will the residents, I'm assuming the residents in that particular newly developed neighborhood or whatever it is, whatever's developed, they will still have to pay the street fees, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So what we see on this slide is simply a graphical representation of what we talked about before. Just to point out here, you'll notice a steady increase in the recommended funding amount, and you notice that our adopted budget kind of dips and jumps over time. There's not a real steady pattern there, other than whatever amount is available that given year, that's how much is put towards street maintenance. So what we look at from a strategic concern standpoint, streets are funded out of the general fund, which means that they are in competition with the fire department. They're in competition with the police department. They're in competition with Parks and Recreation. And all of these things that at any given time, if you ask anyone, would you like more of those things, then typically the answer is yes, we would love more parks, we would love more police, we would love more fire. So that environment of competition tends to put streets on a back burner. It's easy to say, well, we can cut 100,000 here, we can cut 100,000 there. And when you make an argument of public safety versus streets, it's very difficult and results in a highly competitive environment. So what we're discussing going forward is the city should consider an alternative revenue source for street maintenance. One option for that is a street maintenance fee, which is a dedicated fee that would be separated out through an enterprise fund to ensure integrity and transparency, that would provide the necessary funding for properly maintaining the street system. Notice we keep using that word maintenance. I hate to harp on it, but it is for maintenance. It is not for new roadways. It's not for those types of things. It is for maintaining a roadway. But what is a street maintenance fee? It's a primary source of revenue for street maintenance. It consists of 4 components, and we'll talk a little deeper about each of these as we go through these slides. System cost is fairly simply the dollar amount that it takes to address street maintenance. So we talked earlier about 4.6 million as our operating budget. You take that number plus the deficit that we have for street maintenance of 1.7, that puts you at 6.3 million as your total system cost. And in the formula that you'll see later, system cost is a little different because it breaks down into the system cost per unit. Next component is a land use designation, and that's just simply how the property is used. Number of units gives you the total number that a property has on it, and the use factor is what we use to determine how traffic's generated. So as we talk about system costs, there's 3 main components. You have personnel, O&M, and capital. Our budget briefings are broken out that way. You've seen that in numerous budget presentations. And that cost tends to grow with time due to inflation, cost of living. As the city grows, that cost grows.
And this is a different capital than what we've just been talking about.
Correct.
This is machinery capital. It is not new roads capital. It's unfortunate they have the same title, because they're not the same thing.
Correct.
Mrs. Nash King?
Yes, sir, thank you.
I can't hear you.
So with the system calls, I got an echo.
Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
No, but I'm saying the mic, it's
Oh.
being recorded.
You can hear me? Thank you. Sir, I'm sorry for that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. But with the system calls, my question with that, I know the city manager said it's just for the maintenance side of it. For how long? Is it just to get all of our, whatever we need up to par, and then we stop, or is this an ongoing, no?
There are options to do it multiple ways. What you typically see that most cities have is an ongoing cost.
Yeah, it'd be hard to say, you know, our streets are going to be fine forever. They're
You
always going
said
to,
this is maintenance. Did
Yeah,
you not? This is
maintenance.
totally two different things.
Maintenance is a recurring
Right.
cost year after
So
year
this
after
is-
year. It
oh,
never
wow.
goes away.
Yeah.
So by the time you get the first road done and you go through to the last road, it's
Correct.
time to start the first
It's
road again. So
ongoing.
it just keeps going round and round.
Okay.
Mr. Menke?
Yeah, I just had a question, and I'm not sure if I'm confusing it with impact fees or not, but in the road maintenance fee that we're talking about here, is the collection of these fees at the discretion of the city to decide where the maintenance done, or there's service areas, aren't there?
No,
Or is
in-
that
in-
impact fees?
And that's impact fees.
Okay,
This fee
sorry, I'm
is
trying to get it
collected
separate.
citywide, spent citywide.
To be used citywide?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I wasn't sure if it was collected in a certain area that had to be used in this, but that's impact fees.
That's impact fee.
Mrs. Fleming?
So, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question, too, that goes along with Mrs. Nash and Mr. Menking. on these roads that we're, on this system and on this fees that we're asking, now, I'm asking you a question too. We are asking our citizens to pay a utility fee, am I right?
Yes, ma'am. That's
Okay.
what this.
Okay, I just want to clear that up because some of the people in the audience may not know this. So we're asking our citizens to pay again another fee. Okay, am I correct? Right, okay, I know. Okay, what I'm saying is, I don't think that's really fair because, first of all, most of the people here in Killeen cannot even afford another fee. You have people here that are underpaid, they're living from check to check, and they cannot afford another fee. And here we're sticking another fee on them. I don't think it's fair. We're going to have to come up with something else other than a utility fee for our citizens. I just don't think it's right. I really don't. And I wanted to go on record. Let me finish, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to go on record that it's not fair. We're going to have to come up with something else. I know we need revenue, but I do think if we dig deep enough, we can find the revenue another source. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
No, and that's the dilemma we have, because I think that, you know, it's one or the other. It's like, where do you get the revenue from? So I like your idea, you have to come up with revenue, but that's where we're at, so.
Impact fees, that'll bring the revenue in. Like I said, if we had done this a year ago, we would have revenue coming in right now. Impact fees does bring revenue for our city, and we know the difference. It does bring revenue here. And if we had talked about this and done this, we would have some revenue coming in. I know it takes a year, but we do need to, like Mr. Rivera said, put them together. We do need to do this, and we need to look at this deep, sir. And I just can't go along with this.
So I know we probably don't want to talk about this, but I think, you know, in some point, we just need to clarify what impact fees really are, so.
Yes, sir. And,
Yeah,
and we do have
yeah,
a slide at the end that lays out all of our options for street.
because even if you would have started them a year ago, we'd still be in the same position, because you can't use them for this.
They would have to pay.
Mr. Harris?
So say, it came to my mind when I asked the last question about whether or not the people in new residential areas, if impact fees were implemented, where they had to pay a street maintenance fee. The key I was making about that, though, because I am for impact fees, but the thing about that is, the point I was making is, they have a choice. When they move in, they know what they're getting into. They have a choice, and so they basically volunteer to pay the street maintenance fees, whereas, you know, as we have it now, you know, it's not a complete choice, if you will, because look at the situation that we've been put into, and it's going to have to come down to whether or not people and/or city council members are willing to do this to help the city get to where it needs to be brought up to. But one thing I just wanted to mention, though, before I yield the microphone, basically is, and I know it's going to come up, but we were looking at different options. I'm not sure if it's going to be up there, but one of the options, if it's not up there, it needs to be increase economic development.
Okay, Mr. Menke.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, just because I'm new here, but even if the council would have done, or if the staff would have done the study and impact fees would have been implemented a year ago, not a dime of that money could go to like Gilmer to rebuild it, right? It has to be out on the, let's say, the south side of town, and that's the only place.
New subdivisions. It's not just south, it has to be new
So as
subdivisions.
far as revenue sources go, it's locked in that area where it's obtained, whereas the maintenance fees are
And,
about here.
and the
it's
thing
citywide.
is, you got to realize that just because you have impact fees doesn't mean they're going to be used. Because if I'm a developer and I develop an area and I need to widen those streets, I don't have to widen them. You know, it's for the benefit of the city. And so that's where we have those development agreements, because if I'm a developer, I'll create the standard street. And then in 10 or 15 years, when we have traffic out there, then you're going to have to use this, which is going to cost probably triple to come back and tear up that street and widen it and fix it as growth continues. So that's one of the things, you know, that impact fees really are not like mandatory. You know, it's like, okay, well, I'll do the minimals so I don't have to widen the streets.
Could I add something else to that?
Yes.
Okay, if we're going to be paying maintenance fees, right? Some of the people that are going to be paying for these maintenance fees may not ever use the roads that you all may be fixing down south. They may never use those roads, but yet and still, they're going to be strapped to pay that fee. And that's why I'm saying it's not fair. Whichever direction we go in, I'm just saying it's not fair. Some of the people may not ever use those roads that we're going to have to pay for down south. That's all I'm saying.
People don't
So,
ever go to school,
well, whatever,
it's,
I still wanted to,
don't have kids.
yeah, well,
Mrs.
Okay.
Nash King.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Fleming and Mr. Mayor. Okay, we have system costs, maintenance fees, and maybe CIP. Those are totally three different things, correct, Mr. Olson?
The system cost is just one component
That's the
of the maintenance
maintenance.
fee.
And the impact fee, haven't even
It-
got to that yet. And the CIP is something else that we need. So those are three things, correct?
Impact fees can be used to pay for the CIP plan. Maintenance fees can be used to pay for maintenance. They can't cross, though. An
Correct.
Impact fee can't be used for maintenance.
Right, right.
There are, depending on how it's adopted, there are cases where a maintenance fee can be adopted by council to pay for capital, but that's not what is included here. So they're two completely different silos that you have to place each topic in.
But what Mr. Rivera and I think Mr. Harris and could have been Kirkpatrick and Ms. Fleming, but both of them have to work together. Is that
Not-
correct? They
not
do
necessarily,
not,
no.
we do not have to have one with the other, we can just
No,
go?
ma'am.
Okay, all right.
No.
Present them together so you understand.
Mr. Harris.
Oh, I was going to say, to Councilman Menking, when you're talking about the impact fees, I was going to say, the idea in my head is when you said the impact fees wouldn't be able to be used for any other part of the roads, that's fine, because when those new roads are built pertaining to that particular development or whatever is being built, then if those roads mess up in the first 2 years, like Watercrest, everybody knows about Watercrest. If those two roads mess up like that in the first few years some way, then that money right there would be used to repair that road, which would basically, because it's in that new development. If that road is new and it's in that new development, then that can be used to repair that. Now, but those, okay, go ahead. Okay.
It doesn't work that way.
So let me do this. Okay, so the impact fees, as we said, all right, are used for that particular new development, right?
The impact fees are used to encourage growth within a particular region.
right.
So build new roads, build new infrastructure.
Right. And that impact fee funds will be used to do what?
It would be used for a project like the Rosewood Drive extension.
Okay, so for things such as that, and so now those things right there would still save us from pulling money out of our regular fund or street maintenance fund. It would still save money because we would have money to do those things with. And so that's the point I'm making on that part. That's what I'm saying. Now, as far as the mayor was talking about the ordinance, as far as the minimal standards, we have the authority to change that. We have the authority, because the state has the minimal standard, but the city, by ordinance, can increase that standard. The state only sets a minimal, okay? But we can increase that standard. And so, and that would be, one of the things, because we decided we wanted roads to be a few feet wider as our ordinance, then if I remember correctly, then we can change the ordinance to reflect that. Because the state sets the minimal, but yet at the same time, that minimal is not the locked in, if you will, set.
Yeah, let's get back on track here,
Yeah.
because I think he said this was just kind of a presentation, a brief, if we want to continue this discussion later on, so, yeah, let's continue on.
Yes, keep going.
Mr. Rivera, you got 30
Yeah,
seconds.
this is about maintenance fee. I want to go back to maintenance fee. I understand where Ms. Fleming's coming from, but think about this. Maintenance fee, we need maintenance fee real bad in the north side of Killeen. We got Rensselaer. We got all this part of Killeen, they need maintenance. And that's what we really, right now also, I think this part of the city of Killeen needs a lot of maintenance. And that's one thing that really, we need to get fee, because if we want to better the street in north side of Killeen, we better do something now.
Yeah. Mr. Olson, continue on. See how far you can go this
All
time.
right, thank you. So, as I said, system cost is simply the cost what we incur to operate and to maintain our streets. The next piece that we'll talk about is a land use designation. So within this street maintenance fee, you would have different types of land use designations. We have a few listed here on the slide. You'll recall when we had talked about street maintenance fees originally, there was a very small, I think it was 11 different land uses. We have expanded that at this time, and what we're reviewing is approximately 70 different land uses. So we've expanded a lot of the commercial and industrial types of land uses to have a more broad category and capture a more specific type of use. The number of units then ties to that land use. Each type of land use we're going to break down into one type of unit. For example, a single-family residential, that's a single-family house, will be one dwelling unit, so the number of units is one. What we're looking at here is essentially residential equivalents. When you look at an apartment complex that has 20 apartments, we're looking at 20 dwelling units, and the total number of units is 20. As you look towards a supermarket at 20,000 square feet, your unit then is one unit per 1,000 square feet. So that same supermarket then would also be 20. You can see that the 20-unit apartment complex and the 20,000 square foot supermarket have the same number of units. However, they may have a different use factor. That use factor then applies how many trips are generated per unit for that particular type of land use. So in this case, we've talked about this in the past, your typical single-family residential home generates approximately 10 vehicle trips per day. So one unit, 10 trips per day. That then equates into trips and miles driven by that vehicle. So using that use factor, then you can see how much of a toll that particular land use, whether it's a single-family home or whether it's a supermarket or whether it's an apartment complex or a school or any other entity, that particular entity has a generated trip. Someone gets in a vehicle and drives to and from that particular place. And if they're not getting in their own vehicle, they may be riding a bus, they may be using the sidewalk system or some other non-motorized transportation through a bike lane or something like that that is part of the roadway system. So that use factor then is used to show how many trips or miles are generated per unit. So then when you look at this as an overall formula, and you'll have to forgive me, I left out a word here, system cost per unit. So you would take the total number of units in Killeen and take our system cost divided by that total number. That gives you a cost per unit times the number of units times the use factor. Those last two, the number of units and use factor, are dependent upon the land use, and then that would give you a final dollar amount. What we would need to do to finalize what that dollar amount would look like is kind of re-up the study that we had from the past. You'll recall 2015, we had a study done and it looked at some of this and we assigned dollar figures to it. However, before we could move forward, we would need to relook at that study, bring in the new land use categories, and make sure that we have the correct dollar amounts.
Sir,
Mrs. Nash King.
thank you, sir. Sir, would this study be conducted by your staff?
No, ma'am. It's a third-party independent engineering company, and we do that so that if it were to be challenged in a court of law, that you have a non-staff member that's taking the liability for that study as an engineer. So, where we sit today is on the top left corner of this. I know it's a little hard to see, and I apologize for that, but there's a lot of information to fit on one slide here. So the question that we're asking ourselves today is, do we want to adequately fund our street maintenance system? If we do intend to fund street maintenance through one shape, form, or another, then we have a few options here. what we've laid out here first is that we have the option to find those dollars inside of our current budget, which would mean resulting in cuts to other departments in the general fund. So we have a finite dollar amount, and you can't grow that dollar amount without a new source of funding. So if we're not looking outside of the general fund, there's the option to cut general fund dollars. That $1.7 million that's needed to be generated is the equivalent of approximately 31 full-time employees. That just kind of gives you a perspective of what that dollar figure pertains to.
Can I ask
If
you-
you,
I'm sorry.
Mrs. Fleming.
Yes, I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. How long would it take if we do this fee to generate 1.7 million to do this project? How long would it take? You said that's what we need, right? 1.7 million, I wrote it down. You said to do the project.
to what we currently
In
have.
addition to what we already have. So how long would it take us to, if we do the fees, to get that?
Well, you would set it up so that you would have an adequate amount come in each year, because it's $1.7 million per
Okay.
year in addition to what we're doing.
So that's
today.
going to be quite a bit to ask somebody in a fee, right, every month?
The residential fee typically comes a little over $5 a month. Commercial fees
Okay.
vary depending on the size.
Commercial and residential, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Commercial fees vary depending on the size of the development and lots of other factors.
Okay.
But typically residential is in the $5 to $6 per month range.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So if we choose not to make cuts in the current budget, your next option then is to raise taxes to gather that same additional funding, which results in about 2.97 cents on the tax roll. If you choose not to raise taxes, you do have the option to consider a street maintenance fee. And what we're asking today is not to say, yes, I want street maintenance fees, or no, I don't want street maintenance fees. What we're asking is for you to say, either we would like to consider this further and see what that final answer is, so that we can get down here to the bottom right and make a decision as to whether or not we would like to adopt a street maintenance fee.
So we're just looking to see if we want to continue the discussion, further discussion on this, because there's still a lot of questions I know you guys have. And with that, I'm sure we'll include a good presentation on impact fees, too.
If the answer to that question is yes, we want to continue the discussion, that means we've got to go out and get an engineering study. If you say, no, we don't want to continue this discussion any further, we're not going to spend the money or the time on getting an engineering.
Well, we did, and what's the price on that? What's the estimate?
48,000.
48,000.
And that's to carry, if it were to go through the whole process, it's a smaller dollar figure for just some estimates.
I saw Mr. Kilpatrick first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Make a motion that we continue this study.
Second.
All right, motion and second. All those in favor of continuing the study?
I had a
We have a question?
Yes, yes. Didn't we have, was it, what was it that we had in, like 2014, 2015 done when we had, was that an engineering study, or was that just?
2013?
That was an engineering study, right?
Correct. And what I will say too, with the engineering study that is included here, that same study can be used towards the studies necessary for impact fees in the future. So a lot of the land use classifications we're discussing go hand in hand with impact fees.
So-
And it's not completely wasted dollars.
Yeah,
if
so-
we decide not to do
So
it.
since we had, so we can't just use that engineering study that we had from then to do what we need to do now, or we have to pay for a new one?
We can, if,
It's not a whole new one. It's a refreshing of the old one to bring it up to date.
Okay. Okay.
And they told us that, I remember part of that presentation is the
Yeah.
longer we wait, you know, you got to continue, the more it costs too, so. Did anybody else have anything on this? Oh, we have a motion and a second, so,
Question, I have a question.
go ahead.
Okay, how long are we going to bring this, how long are we going to keep talking about this? Will we bring it back up next week, or we have a set date to continue talking about this, Mr. Olson? or what?
Let me answer the question. If you tell us to move ahead and continue the discussion, we're going to go out and establish a contract with an engineering company to refresh the numbers.
Okay.
We think it's going to take about a month for them to do that work. And so I would anticipate being back to continue this discussion mid-July.
Okay, sounds good.
I got one more question.
Mr. Harris.
Right, and this, I'm just trying to be efficient right now when I ask this question. It is, because we already agreed years ago on the impact fees, but will we have to do another engineering study on impact fees as well?
Yes, sir.
So
We will need to update the same
Okay.
impact study that we did 3 years ago.
So, would it be more efficient to have them both done at the same time like we did last time, or would it be more efficient to have them done separately? I mean, because we did them both last time together, and so if we do them separately, would that cost more, or would it be more efficient to
No,
do them together?
What we're looking at here is the first piece of this can be applied to both impact fees and street maintenance fees, and then there would be another piece in addition that, if we chose to, if we go that route in the future, it would just be an ad service for the engineer. It wouldn't cost any more to do it then than it would to do it today.
So doing it together wouldn't be more efficient then?
They're going to charge the same scope and fee. It's a certain amount of scope and a certain fee, so we can either break it up into scope and fee for both, or we can.
No bundle package?
No, sir.
Oh, okay.
This is a bundle package deal. This is actually
Call for the vote.
All right, all those in favor of moving forward at a cost of what? Do we need to put that in there too, or no?
You just need to tell us you want to move forward.
Move forward. All those in favor of moving forward, just raise your right hand. All right, motion carries unanimously. Right. Moving on to the next DS item, 18046. Receive aviation parking briefing. Mr. Van Valkenburg. Here's another big issue.
Wish we had little ones.
So I say, Council, you got a tough job this year.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council, City Manager, and City Attorney when she comes back. This is an informational brief for you to provide you with some information concerning the airport funding, the exempt parking impact on the aviation fund. I'd like to first introduce our revenues versus expenditures from year 2013 through year 2018. As you can see, we spent a little bit more than we made in years 15 and 16 rather. 17, we broke even. We were on track to break even this year, and then Delta left, and that caused us to skew our numbers a little bit to where it looks like we're going to be spending a little bit more than we were making this year. Let me give you a little bit of information about our revenue categories. Things I'd like to point out here to you is our parking lot fees are very important and one of the largest fees that we have going towards the airport. The largest amount of money that we make is from our rental cars and our rental car concessions. The next thing we have is airline operations. That's all the money we get from the airlines, not just the rents that they pay, but the landing fees, the other fees that we have built into running the airport with respect to airline operations. Other concessions are what we have for food and beverage and various things that we do. Then our fuel sales and miscellaneous receipts are a very small portion of that. And then our TxDOT grants are another very, very small portion of our revenue categories. To also help you set the stage, what I'd like you to do is look at our employments. Year over year, our employments have been going down. Now, there's a number of reasons for this, and we can talk about a lot of things. The main reason it's going down is what we'll call loss of capacity. The airlines have cut back on flights. When you cut back on flights, you lose seats. When you lose seats, less people go into seats. When less people go into seats, you lose the number of employments that you have. We've lost capacity year over year from the beginning in 2015 through this year, 2018. There is good news. As of this month, our capacity has gone back up. Delta, or not Delta, but United has added their third flight in, so we have 3 daily United flights, and American has added a 7th daily flight back into the mix. So our capacity is slowly coming back up. Our load factors are also moved from an average of about 69% to over 80%. Those are good indicators that we're doing the right things per the airlines and doing what we're doing. But our trend has been going down. We're looking to hopefully stabilize that and move that trend back towards the positive. Let's get into some of the issues that we have today. One is that the aviation fund is approaching the need for general fund subsidy. I'm going to show you that in just a moment on the slides here. The exempt parking that we have does adversely affect the airport's ability to generate positive revenue. We're going to show you that. We're going to show you that trend and why that's important. Exempt parking revenue loss is 11% of total airport revenue. 11% of total airport revenue. It's also 41.3% of our total possible parking revenue. This revenue loss hinders our ability for development. What do I mean by that? We do a lot of different projects. Some of the projects that you know, we're very good at matching an AIP grant with a passenger facility charge grant. A 90% grant, we meet it with 10%, no need for operational funds. However, there are some projects that we have that are not eligible for the passenger facility charge, which means we need to come up with our own cash out of the operating fund or find some other mechanism to fund that project. If we're making positive revenue, we have revenue that we can put back into some of our projects. Telling slide, aviation fund balance. The bottom line, trend line, is where we're currently heading. This year, we're going to hold our own. Next year, in fiscal year 19, see that we're going to be losing some out of our fund balance to give us a balance of approximately $69,800. Year 2020, it's projected that we'll go negative at $42,000. You can see how the trend moves down. That's if we continue doing what we're doing using exempt parking. One thing I'm going to show you in a little while is that exempt parking is not going down, the trend is up, and it's still going up, and it's been going up for the past 10 years, so to speak. If we can use that revenue to go back into our fund balance, it helps us create a positive fund balance, and you can see where our trend line goes if we can add that revenue in. Now, that's using the full amount of that revenue. We'll get into other possibilities later on. Let me give you some of the background to the project. This all stems from the Texas Transportation Code, the relevant section that we have here, the 1995 Act, defined disabled parking, and it said that you can exempt the payment of a parking fee collected at a parking meter charged by a governmental authority. However, it also provided that that governmental unit, a city, may provide by ordinance, which it also applies to a fee imposed by the governmental unit for parking at a parking garage or a parking lot or a space, then they add with a limitation on the length of time for that parking. Now, where is this exemption valid? All parking meters, public parking lots, public parking facilities, the airports, or designated spaces or areas for persons with physical disabilities. Now, some of the background here, the initial law had two exemptions, and those exemptions were the Medal of Honor and the disabled vet. They expanded that to 5 in 1999. They added the Purple Heart, the prisoner of war, and the Pearl Harbor survivor. However, it has now grown to 23 exemptions, and that's just the pure exemption. There are all sorts of variations that you can get with those exemptions. It also recently added widows of veterans with the exempt license plates. Clean informally honored the exemption beginning in 1995, and in 2000, the city attorney's opinion was that it was mandatory to honor all exemptions. We formally adopted an ordinance for exemptions in 2015, and as I stated, that now eats up 41.3% of our parking revenue, our current parking revenue, and 11.7% of total airport revenue. Let me show you the parking trends. The top line is our airport parking revenue, and it's decreasing annually. Why is it decreasing annually? There are a couple reasons. One is the decrease in employments. If you don't have as many people coming to the airport or using the airport, you're not going to get as many people parking. That hurts. The loss of Delta hurt. Delta doesn't help us by losing because they had almost 20% of our employments at the time. Then we have an increase in our exempt transactions. As you can see from the bottom line, airport exempt revenue is increasing almost at an average of 9% annually. Last year, the gross exempt revenue that we lost was $306,832. This year, it's on pace to exceed that amount. We're going to exceed that amount this year. We're on track for almost $790,000 in overall revenues this year, but once again, the total revenues from exempt parking is increasing. This is the percentage of gross revenues that we've seen just over the past 4 years, 23.6% of our revenues in 14 to 27% to 30.3%, to 41.3%. This year, we're on a pace to increase that. It's on a track for a 5% increase this year already, to show you that. Let me show you what the other airports around us are doing that have significant military involvement. Abilene, which has Dyess Air Force Base, they lose approximately 4.5% of their parking revenue. Austin, which doesn't have any major military base around it, they lose about 5.4% of their revenue. Notice they make over $22 million a year on parking alone. That's just their parking revenues. El Paso, Fort Bliss, 6.9%. We're at 41.3%. The next closest to us is San Antonio, which has a huge military presence. They're at 14.2%. I can tell you that between El Paso and San Antonio, those are 2.5% increases over the last 2 years.
Mr. Mayor, question.
Mrs. Nash King?
Sir, are you saying, thank you, Mr. Mayor, are you saying that these cities do not allow veterans to park free?
No, I'm saying they give the same exemptions, but this is the impact on their parking as opposed to the impact on our parking.
Smaller percentage. And I notice up there, Dallas is not up there, because I know Dallas
Yes.
only does disabled vet, they don't do anything else.
I didn't pull the Dallas numbers out.
'Cause,
I can give you a quick, if you'll bear with me.
Mr. Rivera?
Yeah, well, I just want to talk about Austin for a minute. You show that it's 1.2, but that's not on the airport, I presume, because downtown, they also have free parking.
No, sir, this airport only.
That's only airport only?
This is only airport
So that's nothing to
comparative
do
airports.
with any other parking?
No, sir.
Okay.
I'm only looking at their
Just wanna
parking
make sure
revenues
that's
and their
only
losses.
airport.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. All we're trying to show here is we have a disproportional loss compared to these other airports. And there are many reasons for that. Probably the closest is that we're most heavily affected because Fort Hood is right in our backyard that we have with that. There are some alternatives. These are not all the alternatives.
Mr. Mayor, I had a question. Mr. Van Valkenburg, I guess my question is, do all those airports honor the 23 exemptions collectively, like we do? I mean, do you know,
Austin does.
I
I
don't know
can
if they're
answer that
required to, or if
question.
if that's, because if some are more restrictive, then I could see how it'd be.
Yeah, Austin,
Abilene is more restricted. Austin honors them all, although their ordinance does not say that. By practice, they honor them all. We've talked to their parking people. They honor them all. Corpus honors the Purple Heart and the DV. El Paso
So it
honors.
varies. Okay, so it varies.
El Paso's now honoring all of them. San Antonio honors them all, and we honor them all. Yes, sir. There are some alternatives. These are not by any means an exhaustive list. There are many perturbations that you can take to all this. We just wanted to give you some that we can give you. One is do nothing. Let's continue with the exemptions, and if all things remain stable, if all things, not all the conditions stay the same as they are right now, the airport will be tracking in 2020 or 2021 to require some sort of general fund subsidy. That's if nothing else changes. If we are to raise the parking fees paid by those non-exempt customers, in other words, make those people who aren't exempt bear the load of those people that are to make up for this money, we're going to have to raise our fees by $4 right now, approximately 50% each year thereafter to keep up with the trend. That'd raise our short-term to $14 a day or long-term to $12 a day. That puts us out of some competitive with some other airports, but that's a very high rate for this area. We can accept exemptions, but for example, we could give them a 50% discount of their overall fee. That's one example.
Mr.
Or we
Mayor,
could accept exemptions, but limit the
Question.
time in the parking area.
Mrs. Nash
I
King?
have a quick question. If we do a pay increase of $4, will we be competing with Dallas and Austin? Is that about around the same fee for parking?
In Austin, their economy lot is $7 a day, but if you've ever been to Austin, that's quite a ways away that you've
It
got to
is.
walk. Their other parking ranges from $18 to $23 a day, but they have a parking garage that they use. And your other was Dallas?
Mm-hmm.
Dallas charges $24 a day in all their lots. Now, remember, that's on airport lots. We're not looking at off-airport lots or somebody else have. So on airport lots, Dallas is at 24, and Austin varies from their $7 a day to $23 up to $27 in their garages.
And that's short-term, long-term?
Yes, their economy lot, well, yes. For Dallas, it's a flat rate of $24.
Okay,
For Austin, when they just called it their garage, and they have various levels in their garage, or you have valet parking.
So if we
And they
even
give the
go
one that-
short-term, $14 would be 18, long-term, 12 would be 16.
No, that's the new.
No.
That's it?
Right now, we're at 8 and 12,
Okay.
or 8
That's
and
good
10.
compared
This
to
would be
other-
with the increases, what we'd have to charge to get that. Give you an idea, San Antonio, their long-term garage is $12 a day. Their short-term, however, is $25 a day. Their economy lots, which are, gosh, I don't know, quarter mile, well, half a mile away, they're $8 a day. El Paso's a little different, but they all run shuttles also from their parking lots to the terminals that they have.
But we still have the lowest fee.
We have a very competitive fee. Yes, ma'am. I believe we have a very competitive fee for the airports that have a military presence that we're competing with.
Mrs.
And once again,
Fleming.
this is just one example. This is just an example of what could potentially be done.
Ms. Fleming.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Van Valkenburg, I didn't see Waco down there. Does Waco have an airport? They have an airport too,
They have an
right?
airport, yes, ma'am.
I didn't see them down there. Was there a reason you didn't put them down there, sir? Waco
The
on
reason I
this
did,
list? On
because
this list?
they don't have a military presence, but
Oh,
right now,
okay.
they don't charge for parking
They don't,
because
okay.
they can't.
Oh, okay,
And the reason they cannot right now is they accepted a federal grant to build their parking lot.
okay,
So while they're still under the federal grant
Okay.
assurances, until that parking lot is all paid for, they are unable to charge for
To
parking
charge,
because
okay.
it's a public lot and they're not allowed to make money off it. However, as soon as that's paid for, I'm sure then they'll have another option.
thank you, sir. I was just wondering.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
That's a good question.
Some other alternatives, once again, we can limit the time in the parking areas, 2 days, 1 day, 12 hours, 4 hours. The time doesn't matter, but by the state statute, we can limit the time that we give the exemption. We can still grant an exemption, but we can limit the time. Or we can eliminate the fee. Eliminate the fee totally, and everybody's equal across the board. And then obviously, we'll not need a general fund subsidy, and we can move on. Now, these are just some ideas of what could be done. There are a myriad of perturbations that we can go through to come up with the right thing, and various charges of the free parking we give for the first half hour. Some airports give 15 minutes, some don't give any when you do that. Sir?
Mrs. Nash King.
Thank you, sir. When you look at limit the time in parking areas, are we doing that so we can pay off our debt? What would be the purpose of doing it if we had the option to use that?
The purpose is because right now, we don't want to have a general fund subsidy. We've never used
Right, I
general
got
fund
that
money.
part.
And that's what this does. If you limit, it brings money back into the enterprise fund, which then creates us the opportunity to be more self-sufficient, so we don't even have to look at the general fund, and the general fund doesn't have to worry about us going down the road. They can concentrate on the problems that you just talked about, for example.
Sir, my question to you is, when you limit the time, are you talking about 5 years to pay off and get out the red, get out the red, or are you
No.
just saying it's going ongoing?
No, ma'am, I'm not setting a time limit. That's for council to do that. We can make you recommendations. The deal is we can say we're going to do it for a year, but then we're going to have the same problem at the end of that year, at the end of that 5 years when we do that.
When he talks about setting a time limit, he's talking about giving the exempt parking for 1 day or 2 day instead of no limits. Right now, a person can go in and they can park their car there and go on a 30-day vacation if they want.
I am one of those that's exempt, so I do understand the process, and I was just curious about, you gave us an option, and I was just curious to why.
Well, there are many options. If I can give you a quick bit of data here. The average price for the exempt fare is over $36. So per transaction, it's about $36 what we get. So it's either more than 3 days, or it's, if you go with the $8 fare, 36, that's 4 to 5 days
It's like give and take. I
that we
like it.
have for that.
Okay.
What we would like from council is for you to digest this information, take it back, and generate questions for us. I believe with the city manager, we're bringing this back to you next week to get your questions, to get further guidance from you with your concerns, your issues, and the direction you'd like to take, so that we can move forward in our budget deliberations and see what we want to do. What I would ask is if you have questions coming up during the week, please send them to us so we can prepare the proper answers to you, and we have the proper data that we can give you the answer that you need. My job is to give you all the information that you want so that you can make an informed decision with what you think is best.
We have one more
For us.
question, Mr. Kilpatrick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Clarification. Eliminate the fee. That's eliminate the exemption
The
of the
exemption.
fee.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. the
That
exemption.
reads eliminate the fee, which means you eliminate parking fees. So I don't see how you could ever not need general subsidy and increase your balance then.
Yes, sir, the exempt fee.
That's a mistake. It should say
Yes, sir.
eliminate the exemption.
Okay. That makes more sense to me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Rivera.
I'm just some old country boy from South Arkansas.
So when we talk eliminating the fee, we also talking about DV plates also as well, right? Eliminate DV plates in the airport, the fee.
Well, it's the exempt plates. DVs are just
Exempt-
one of the
exempt plate?
exemptions.
I just want to go on the record. Whatever you brings up is about eliminating the DV plate, I will not support it. I'm telling you that right now. All the widows of a DV plate, I'm for eliminating the others per se, but not the DV plates. If that vehicle has a disabled vet in it, I'm not willing to waive that parking fee. These people pay a big price. We support them, and I understand we got a problem in the airport. I do support them 100%. And I just can't see how we're going to eliminate the DV plate. Every other exception, I'm for it. Putting a period of time, about like 15 days, instead of 30 days, I'm for that also. But I will not eliminate, and you will not have my vote to eliminate the DV plate, no ins, no about, and no time.
Can
That's
I just ask on that question, because I know you said there's 23 exemptions. Is there, within those 23 exemptions, different varieties of the DV, or is just DV just one of the 23?
DV
So
is one of the
if we leave
23.
the DV there, then that means we got 22 others that we can eliminate.
Yes.
That's correct.
Yeah. And I kind of think it, because I told the city manager, because I'm one of those that, I got a Bronze Star, I don't got the TVB, but in some places, they give me the exemption, and like in Killeen, I go to Dallas, they don't give them to me. They say, you got to have the DV, and I think that's the only exemption they have in Dallas, if I'm not mistaken, as far as I know. I don't know, maybe they do, but I know they don't give it to me over there, but they do here. And so I don't mind losing it, so.
As of this morning, I got a lot of calls concerning the veterans. Anything that dealt with the military, the veterans, people was totally upset about this. Even people from Fort Hood called me, and they said, this is terrible, that if you eliminate anything with the VA, with veterans, with spouses or anybody, I just don't, I can't vote for this either.
No.
As long as it's dealing with the military and the veterans, the disabled people, Fort Hood is our neighbors, and Fort Hood depends on us. And all the veterans that have risked their life for us, we cannot take an exemption away from them. We cannot take any benefits from them. And I hope that there's some other way, Mr. Van Valkenburg, that we can work this out without hurting the VA, hurting the military guys.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say. I want to go
Okay.
on record like Mr. Rivera, too,
fine.
that I protect, the
Well-
military, the disabled, anybody that's dealing with the military.
And where there's the challenge, and like I say, it's, though,
And I can't vote for anything.
we don't want to hurt the military, but at the same time, everybody else has to make up for that. So it doesn't come from anywhere. So, either you go up on price on everybody else so that we can honor our military, but then you got to say, is that going to lose revenue? Because people may not park there then, who knows? So,
Mr. Mayor, for the record, I'm talking about DV plates.
yeah. no,
I'm
I
not
got
talking
that.
about any other exception.
Just DV. 1 out of the 23 is DV.
One out of the 23.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to what is it that we wanted to do? Just bring this back or something, Mr. Olson?
Let me answer your question, then I have a comment. So we want to bring this back next week at our work session and continue the discussion. We'd like you to digest the information. We'd like you to formulate your questions. If you can, give us the questions in advance so we can make sure we have good, accurate answers for you. And we'll continue it. And after we've answered all of your questions, we're going to be asking you for some guidance. Where do you want to go with this? And we're not asking that today. We'll start asking it next week. So that
We have a specific list of the 23 exemptions.
we
I can provide that to you. I don't have it in this
If
brief.
you
but
can
I have
email
that.
it to us.
all right.
So council, what that means is between now and next Tuesday, you are going to be bombarded by emails and calls and people, so hopefully you can handle that. So, don't come in here all stressed out because 1,000 people called you. So,
Never stressed out.
Mr. Harris.
I was just going to ask, can we just get I guess, an email or a copy of the 23 exemptions so we can just look over those and just have them?
No, sir, that's what he asked for. I have that down to send that to you.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Olson.
Okay, so I just wanted to make a comment. Tonight has been an extraordinarily frustrating night for me because we've been talking about money all night. And balancing a challenging budget is not easy. We've heard conversation about we want more of a lot of things out there. We want more police officers. We want
Your centers.
we want more road maintenance. We want more parking revenue.
But we don't want to cut nothing.
Right.
We don't want to raise.
And we don't want to raise any money either. And I'm just telling you, it is not going to fit. So we have to have some pretty difficult, serious conversations as we put this budget this year and in the next several years together. And these are not easy answers. I wish we didn't have to have the conversation because it's not an easy conversation to have. But we do need to have it, and we need to make some hard decisions so that we know how to shape our future.
Mr. Menke.
I just think it's important that everybody understand, the citizens of Killeen will pay it all. 100% of what it takes to run this city, the citizens of the city are going to pay it. They're going to pay it directly, or they're going to pay it indirectly. And so it's important that we really take a good look at what's out there and what, it's a series of bad choices that we're going to have to make. But we have to make the best of the bad choices. We just need to prepare ourselves for it. I'm willing to do it because it's got to get done. We've got to have the roads. We've got to have all these things. Otherwise, it'll just go defunct. And I mean, where does that get us? So
Detroit.
we just got our studying to do, but we'll get it done.
All right. Is that it? All right.
One more topic.
Mr. Van Valkenburg, thank you very much.
Want to take a break before that topic? Like take a break.
All right, we got one more session of our protocol. So next is DS 18-047, discuss protocol. So let's
Do we need
see.
a break before we launch into this?
You guys need a break or not?
Yes, we can
Let's
go
take a 15-minute break. We'll start at 8:30. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and call this back to order so we can get out of here.
12 minutes.
So, next item, DS 18-047, the protocol. Mrs. Davis.
For those of you who didn't hear, that Judy sent a copy of the draft via email this morning, so if you wanted to look at it on your tablets, it's also up here, and we literally have 3.5 pages left to go, so I think we can complete this pretty quickly. And if we want to do the same way that we've done it the last 2 weeks, I think that's worked really well, is the mayor just led us through really where there was committee comments, and then opened up the floor if anyone else had any comments or questions on any other part. So did you want to do that again, Mayor?
Yeah, I'm going to do that, but I know we left off on page 28 before we jumped back during that, and it was Mr. Harris's comment, and I said, well, it's a good thing we left here because Mr. Olson will be here. And the question was on section 5-20, where it says city staff will make all meetings, notice, agendas, minutes, and supporting documents available on the city council and to the public via the city official website. And so that's where we kind of left off on that item, because Mr. Harris was making a point that he wanted to see everything, including the presentations online on that 72-hour notice. And I had pointed out in discussion with our city manager, sometimes that's hard because when we put that thing out on the city website, it's taken and it's in the newspaper on Sunday before the council even gets it. And so it's even being discussed. So that one is one that, you know, Mr. Olson, if you can expand on that and see if that's something that, because right now it says that it'll be available, including presentations and stuff. So.
Okay, so I've got, I think, three things to say about that. I think the council needs to have the information before they make decisions. So in my view, if something came up on the agenda that you didn't have the information attached to it, I would never ask you to make a decision on that night. So you would have the information, and then at a future meeting, you'd be able to have the information and then make a decision later. And if you recall, even now, if you recall back to a time when we had an agenda item that did not have attachments, I've never asked you to make decisions on it that day. So I am concerned about that, and that's my general approach to it. That's comment one. Comment two, there are subjects that I think come along that that get decided before you ever hear them. So I think that there could be certain issues, there will be certain issues where, in my view, the city council should be the first to hear some of the, certain of the items that we have. They shouldn't be played out in the press, they shouldn't be played out on the radio or the TV or at the coffee shop. The council ought to get them first, hear the information, have the benefit of asking the first questions, and then it goes into the public arena. And you take, for example, the issue that we're talking about tonight with the exempt parking at the airport. That thing played in the newspaper on Sunday. You all had phone calls of people saying, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. I don't know, maybe one of you got someone that says do it, but for the most part, I think you got don't do it. And it shaped your opinion before you ever got to this meeting and had the benefit of the discussion. So I do think that there are times when you should not require that information to be put out in advance. And I think you should seriously consider that. And then there's the third thing, and that is there are times when we have a hot issue that we know we need to have discussion about it. We know we need to get it in front of the city council, and we simply don't have time to gather up all the data by Thursday before the meeting. We believe we'll have time between Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday morning to be able to put it together. But as of the time we need to publish the agenda, we simply don't have it done. So those are three things that I think you need to consider as you're making your policy.
So with that said, on that item there on 520-A, it says city staff will make all meeting notices, agenda minutes, and supporting documentation available to the city council and to the public via city official website. So it includes all documentation. So how can we word that so that, you know, it doesn't say that? Because right there it says it all. So with
Mayor.
exceptions or something?
I think it's fine the way it is because there's no time limit. Because, you know, Hillary always says, as soon as you get the information, she says it'll be up in 5 minutes. Or, you know, she's loading it oftentimes from her seat over there. So it doesn't say that it has to be on the city's website 72 hours before the meeting. It says the information will be available to the public via the city's official website. Most of the time it is Thursday or Friday before the meeting, but in those rare exceptions that the city manager was talking about, it will be available on the website.
Okay.
So would be compliant with this section.
And the main thing, and Mr. Harris, because this one's one of yours, and we just want to make sure you're clear and you're okay with that. Go ahead, Mr. Harris.
I was going to offer possible solution, because like the first one you said is, gets to others before it gets to us, and you said it's subject to being decided in the public before we even discuss it and so forth, and, you talked about, us possibly being persuaded by people who are already forming opinions about it. And the third one, you said there are hot issues that you don't have enough information for just yet as far as data, and, not enough to really discuss. So I think on that part, one of two possible solutions is, if it's legal, get us the information early before it goes to workshop. Just send it to us, say, hey, this is what's going to be coming up in 2 weeks. We haven't published it yet, if that's legal. And so we can have time to study it in advance. And we can see it, but nobody else will see it because we'll be studying it on our own. That's one option. The another option is to, and then another option basically is to, I'm trying to remember it, I thought I had written down. But so the first one is to get it to us early, before you put it on the agenda, or the second option, gosh, I didn't write it down, so I'm trying to remember. But that's one of the options that I did have, though. Give it to us early, and then put it on the agenda later. If we don't have the data for it, then if we know we don't have all the data for it, then we just don't have the data for it. But the other thing, basically, I think I thought of was, in regards to not wanting us to have, or not wanting the citizens to, possibly have some of the information, or you not wanting us to have to make a decision before we actually hear and read what we need to have, then I think on that particular portion, because usually we hear it at a workshop, and then generally we have to vote on it the next week at a council meeting. So on something like that, if it's that pressing, I would say we may need 2 workshop sessions to get that done, especially if we just come into it. And so that gives adequate enough time to ask questions, and then when it does come out to the public, then we have more answers than we have non-answers, if you will, to be able to discuss with them. And so we'll be less swayable, if you will, because we already have information
I don't know if that really covered what we were talking about, because let's say you go 2 weeks out. What we're talking about is you still got to post it on as an agenda item, and we're talking about having those presentations attached to that. So let's say, Thursday, you got to post it on Thursday. And so what we're talking about, do you post that presentation along with
Right,
it
right.
before the council gets it? So whether it's a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks out, you still got to post it. So what he's saying is, we don't want to have to post it and before it gets to you.
And that's why I gave 2 options of either doing it that way, but like you said, the other way you still have to post it. You're right on that one. But the first one, of course, giving us information early about what's coming up. Here's the information we already have, and that's before posting because it hasn't been announced officially yet. We just got some information early, and then the next week when it comes up, possibly you post it, and we already have information.
So I think the main thing is, as long as we put it on there that we're going to talk about it, and if, let the city manager decide if he thinks that's something that needs to be, held back before you get it. What we're asking, I think what the city manager is asking for us is give them that right to say, okay, I'm not going to put it on the website on Thursday, even though you're going to get that information on Tuesday. If everybody's okay with that, you just needs to.
I say, but in that case, if we do it that way, then that's when I say get the second workshop.
Yeah, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah. As long as you get a second one, but you see what I'm saying is.
But what he said, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, it's going to be published go ahead.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I like what he's saying. What he's saying is the same thing Mr. Olson is saying, to hold back the week, our presentation. And also send us the following week to us. I like that. And then we already have it, so you always a week ahead, even though he don't present it to us that particular one that Tuesday. But we do have a week ahead, even more time to prepare to come in here and discuss it.
Yeah.
I love what he said. I
So you're
mean,
going to have 2 weeks.
Yes, you have 2
2
instead
weeks.
of 1, and I like that. We used to do that in the military sometimes. We get our
No,
stuff.
and that's
to it.
fine, but the point I keep making is, what you're saying is okay if he's got an agenda item with a presentation, not to attach, if he doesn't feel that, the public needs to know before you get it. You're okay with him not attaching it until,
Correct.
you get it.
Both of them.
And then as a matter of practice,
Yeah.
we'll go to 2 work sessions.
2 work
instead of 1.
sections. Is that okay?
That's a good solution.
So do we need to put that in here somewhere?
I think we should.
Do you think so? Okay.
Thank you.
And I think, I mean, that ought to be at the council discretion.
I gotta say, makes a lot of sense.
Mr. Kilpatrick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The only consideration may be there is P and Z. We have to sync that, because if they meet on a Monday and they have a case, it won't be there 2 weeks out, because you won't have their decision.
No, that's where, okay, I think we need to clarify, because that you can put, you know, you have a
Got to
agenda
go on the
item.
agenda for the 72-hour.
Yeah, it'll be on there, so.
Yeah,
you-
but we won't get it beforehand, because we didn't know about it until Tuesday before the Thursday. So you're not going to get it 2 weeks out.
So we don't get that Thursday.
You just have to sync the P and Z information, because that zoning that they are recommending a change, it's for the next meeting.
I can't imagine, though, that we wouldn't just include all of that information with the
The
agenda.
package, yeah.
Yeah.
It'll be in the package.
It'll be
Well-
with the agenda, but I'm saying it may not be, because we won't know their decision before you send it out for the 2 weeks out. Right now, we get it a week out.
But you can sync it together, though. We can start, we may not start next week, but we can start from their meeting forward, we can start that 2 weeks.
Yep.
We can always come after them and send it.
I'm
So
just saying it.
that's sync, that's what you're saying.
Yeah,
We
but
can
you have
do
to
it, it's
sync it to
possible.
where well, it may or may not be.
Would you summarize what we're hearing? Because I'm.
Good, good, good deal.
I'm getting
It'll
a little
work.
confused.
I got confused too, because I
It'll
thought we
work.
were, and let me, you know, I was at a Myers conference this past weekend. One of the things that has helped a lot of cities grow, and it was a huge popular item, and it was the efficiency of being able to do things, you know, without delay. And so P and Z was one of them, and they have, some cities now have a system where they go online and everything is done instantly. And, you know, whereas sometimes we go backwards, you know, we're adding time, you know. So if you got somebody that wants to apply for a permit and now they got to wait all this extra time, it might be not as attractive. And so I would not recommend it. My recommendation was only based on the items that the city manager feels that the council needs to get it before we post it on our website. That's it. So if there's something that that's an agenda item, and there's a presentation, but it's not attached, then that item would be like 2 weeks. You know, he'll present, and then we give it an extra week. But everything else, like P and Z, would just work the normal way that we do now, because we never have a presentation that is attached to that where the city manager has to come out and do a full-blown presentation. Those are things that are just put on our,
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I was just saying, 7.5 years on the P and Z, little experience. It says, we got timelines in there.
yeah.
You got 30 days to be able to do something, or the cities that held it fault to a developer. And
Exactly.
it defaults.
Yeah.
So if they did not hold it this week for their meeting, and they held it the next week, and we've got to hold it on that council the next week.
Yeah.
We may not get it 2 weeks in advance.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, it'll always work. It'll work. Confident.
We won't change that at all. If it works now, it should work, because we don't want to change that. We're only talking about certain presentations. And I don't know how we figure out a wording for that.
I wrote something down. I can read it, and y'all can tell me if if I've missed something. So after that sentence where it says, "City staff will make all meeting notices, agendas, minutes, and supporting documentation available to the city council and to the public via the city's official website." Then I could add, if supporting documentation isn't available to the city council in advance of a meeting, at council's discretion, council will be given 2 workshop sessions to discuss the item before it moves to a business meeting for action.
That sounds good.
Okay.
Mr. Harris, good?
Now, is it going to be, okay, but I mean, just, because I know it said at council's discretion. So is it just going to be 2 weeks, or if the council decides, like, we got enough of it?
I can imagine,
Yeah.
I can imagine a situation where the council doesn't want to go 2 weeks. They're ready to deal with it. And I think council ought to be able to say, roll it to 2 weeks, or we're happy with it.
Okay.
Rokid? Mr. Rivera?
Just got a question that came to my mind. If we get this 2 weeks ahead, and it's because we don't want to bring it out to the public per se, Can the media come in and ask for under the, okay, so you know what I'm going
In
to ask?
advance or before it's
Freedom.
been given?
FOIA
I mean, they can
request.
ask for it, but it would be in draft. It's a draft form until it's presented to council. And so we wouldn't give it to them. We wouldn't give out draft documents.
Well, that's legal there.
Right.
Not
and-
official
and-
until
I
we
don't
get
get
it
in that area.
presented.
Correct,
It's-
because it's, until we present it to you, it's in draft format, because it can change at any
You know,
time.
you're looking for a battle between you and the media, right?
Right, no, that's, I mean, then what we do is we send it to the Attorney General, and the Attorney General decides.
Yeah, because we haven't decided anything, because it's not there.
I don't get into legal.
All right, so we're good on that one. Mrs. Fleming, do you have some? Mr. Kilpatrick, you got some compliments coming from Mr. Fleming, Mrs. Fleming, so stand up and,
We did 12 minutes on that one subject. On the top of the page 28 under G, it's a statement. How do we enforce it? The last sentence, media interviews will not take place in the city council chambers. We see media in there doing, after the council, asking people questions all the time and interviewing them in the chambers. How would that ever be enforced?
You would ask them to stop, and if they don't, you would ask them to leave.
and that's good, because see, we're learning as we go, because that's a new one by me. So I know I've learned a lot of this stuff. So once we know that, as mayor, I know I can at least try to enforce all that stuff, you know, we can call, we got
Overall,
a good,
media is respectful
we got a good
about
sergeant
that.
at arms there who's hearing this stuff too, so it's he's got my back,
Good to go.
Let's see.
so.
And most of the time, they do. It's very rare if they try to talk to someone
yeah,
during a
we'll see
meeting. Usually, they go out into the hall.
All right,
Election night, they're always there.
so we're moving on to 28 now.
Well,
So,
that's
I
not
just
during
want
a
one
meeting,
clarity.
so.
Moving on to 28, the only
So it would be
changes.
okay if they did, so it would be okay if they did do it outside, though? Okay.
Yeah, we're going outside. If you have media, you go outside.
Okay.
And we're on section 540, social media. City council members participating in social media relating to city business shall use their real name. I think we got that one. We got the
Covered
okay.
that one, they're going to provide us the retention guidelines.
That's right.
We could debate it again, Mr. Harris and I, if you really want us to.
And then other, section 560B, mayor is ceremonial head of the city, is the issue of proclamations, certificates, awards, and the change was there, city council members wishing to bestow such honors shall request the mayor to issue that, and the comment was committee memo, mine's don't open that, or committee memo
Says
request.
Do you need me to read it for you?
Yeah, 'cause it's-
Says committee member requests the following addition. Council members are authorized to present awards, city coins, et cetera, on their own behalf to honor residents of their districts.
Mr. Harris.
Yep, and so we already read it. So what I have written down is basically, city council members, like she said, can discretion award certificates of appreciation, coins from themselves as a representative of a particular district in which they are council members for, as recognition to those who stand out in their district for a large council members, the city. And these recognitions are outside the regular norms for the recognition the mayor may make. So in other words, these are for, if you want to say the more unrecognized, the little people, if you will. Okay, these are some people who do things in the community that doesn't reach City Hall and that we don't do proclamations for and go out and do stuff for. But being able to go out into our districts and be able to recognize people if they did something, if they're doing something for the community, if they're providing a service, and us being going out to do that because, like I said, that may not reach the level of the recognitions that you do. And so I believe that we should be able to do that on our own, even at our own discretion for our district areas. And I think that would be a good thing because, I've done it before when they did the, the Relay for Life. I went out and she had never, they put it in the paper, they talked about it, but she had never gotten anything. So I went out there to her and it wasn't a ceremony or any type of thing like that. I just went out to her and I just talked to her and I said, I'd like to give you this right here as appreciation, the token of appreciation for, from me, city council member of District 4 and so forth, and appreciate you for what you're doing in this particular, even the activity you're doing in this particular district. And so that went over pretty well. I mean, with her, she enjoyed that,
And right now, you can still, like a lot of you guys, if I'm not there, if you ask for some and I sign off, like you did one for me the other day, and it comes, and so,
Intelligent and gifted
Yeah.
girls.
Yeah.
so, and I sign off with no problem, so I don't.
Okay.
I
So-
don't
so
know,
we-
you just gotta, and people see that as, the mayor's only role is that ceremonial thing,
Hmm.
and it's got the mayor's, so you're representing the mayor on behalf, and I think it even carries a better oomph, I'm presenting.
Well,
this
we can,
to
yeah,
you.
we can definitely do that. So, I mean, if we, like I said, if we find something that we deem, like I said, it's not just going to be anything nilly-willy, of course. It's going to be something that we actually deem, good. But-
And,
but-
and the reason we do that is because when I became as mayor, I didn't know, and I was schooled by our PR real quick, right? Because we had a lot of requests, and I didn't know, people, as mayor, would ask me for, like, I want to do proclamation, and you want to give them to everybody, but proclamation.
Yeah, we don't
whether
do
you're ma-
proclamations, no.
It's,
Yeah.
no, what I'm saying
Yeah.
is, on my part, it's something that, you give to certain occasions, you don't just give them all out.
Right.
And so it kind of makes it more valuable when you're just not handing everything in coins out. So that's why if you ask PR, if you ask Hillary or whatever, they'll let me know, and, we'll be glad to do it. That way, we don't have them going all over the place, and
Yeah.
you devalue
Yeah.
that, so.
Because I'll definitely say, I don't think there'll be, I mean, I may have given out like, the time I served on the council, like 2 or 3.
Yeah.
So I'm very, picky on what I give out and so forth, so. But like I said, but at the same time, we can come and we can get a certificate or bring one and you can sign it, and we can still go present it and so forth. But, basically on behalf of the district and as recognized by the mayor as well, just to,
Yeah,
But yeah.
so that one, like I said, I don't have problems with you coming and asking, they'll let me know, and I'll sign it off.
we got to come in and ask, or we just go do it? That's the thing, because that's where, if somebody says, well.
But you got to
that's-
ask, 'cause even I have to ask, because I don't write them.
Tell me, do we have to ask?
Whether it's a certificate,
Okay, so.
so if I want a certificate.
What if we just give a coin?
Well, we have a variety of things. The city coin is the official city coin, and he is the official head of the city. So that we're pretty restrictive with, plus they're fairly expensive. Proclamations would come on behalf of the mayor, obviously, because he signs the official proclamation. We also do certificates of sorts, so there's everything from a certificate of appreciation to an honorary citizen certificate to a letter of recognition. There's a gamut.
Okay, so basically, we just come to you, get your,
And I can help guide you to what you're trying to give or to get. And if it's something that's more official that you really do want to give something more substantial to, that's when we go.
that's when we go to him, but yeah, but if it's just like it's a small service or something like that for like District 4, just something that we want to recognize, and it's not to that status, but it's recognizable.
I would just pose to you that what about an at-large member? They don't represent a specific district. They represent the city as a whole, which would be the mayor's purview to give something from the city as a whole.
So just from the district, you don't think would be a good idea?
I think it's most appropriate from the symbolic head of the city. That's what the charter says. However, like I said, there may be some ways to provide you some help in getting what you need to do.
Okay, we'll talk.
Yeah, either way, what I mean by going to her is,
I know what you mean.
go to her, if it's a certificate of appreciation, they let me know and I sign off on it. So-
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
So you don't come to me and ask, you just let them know, and then they'll let me know.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean by,
Right,
coming to
yeah,
me,
yeah.
is you go to them. And,
Another
so
12
Mr. Menke had
Yeah,
a question.
I'm just real quick, if it's got a K on it, K with the star at the top, it's the mayor's. As far as I'm concerned, as far as any kind of awards or giveaways or anything, if it's got the K, it's his. So now he can delegate it to anybody to
Yeah.
do that. But the other thing is, we want to make sure we don't have the district setup with 3 at large, and the district setup is a representative division. It's not a political entity unto itself that is kind of operates, contiguous to itself in things of a matter like that. It's a city recognition, and so the mayor should take care of that.
Very good. So we're going to leave that one like it is, right?
As is.
Ms. Nash King,
I just said moving forward.
move forward. Let's go, page 29. On page 29, I don't see anything that was changed. Do we got some, Mr. Kilpatrick?
Real quick, this shouldn't take anything. On 620, all, no official shall not accept or any gift, favor, service of value. Can that be defined to us in an email or something, each one of us? Somebody wants to pay my ticket to a banquet.
Okay.
That has value. It's a
Right.
meal, and it's a $50 seat.
Value is anything of value, but it's important to read the entire sentence. You cannot accept a gift or favor in consideration of having exercised any official power or performing any official duty. So you cannot accept a gift because of some official action that you took or didn't take. So basically, like, thank you for your vote last night, here's a steak dinner. That's what that means. Here's a pen, that's what that means. It doesn't mean that just, if someone wants to invite you to a dinner that you can't go, but if you've just voted in their favor on an important issue and then they invite you out, then I think that it could appear that it's as a thank you for your official action.
Then read the last one, are performing an official duty on behalf of the city.
Right. Right, because of an action that you took or didn't take in your job as a council member, someone is giving you something of value.
No bottle of whiskeys.
That's state law.
And
So all
what-
that does
Mr. Mayor,
is
what about
cause the state law
prospecting?
Okay, so any value,
Correct.
military says $5 or, whatever.
Mr. Rivera.
What about prospecting? Someone trying to prospect something and they invite you to dinner?
If you believe that's what's happening, and if it's very clear, then you should not accept
So in other
that.
words, when I go to TML, I should not go to any dinner when this company invite you to go to dinner.
Everybody?
I think that's getting a little bit further out here.
Oh,
What this is telling you.
prospecting. They
Sure.
prospecting.
I think that's far enough removed. This is talking about a specific action. If someone is wanting you to take a specific action, and they're going to give you something to encourage you to take that specific action. Yes. Or a thank you.
Yeah, you can never go to any conference because they prospect a lot.
No, that's what I mean. I just want to make sure.
All right, moving on. Page number 29, 20, 30. We're on page 30 now. Anybody got any? There's no changes. There's no highlight on page 30. So we're okay moving on there? Okay, going to 31. 31, we have a highlight there, section 710. If city council member, board member is determined to be in violation of this policy, what is the change here? Kathy Davis.
Right, so this is basically how do you want to enforce this policy? And the way it's written is that on the majority vote of council, a letter of violation signed by the mayor or signed by their mayor pro tem, if the letter is going to the mayor, shall be issued to the person. And then it also says that the letter shall become part of the city council members or board members' official file with the city and will be a public document for all purposes. And the city council member must make a public apology for the infraction of the rules and will be prohibited from participating in a city council meeting or work session until such public apology has been made. And I know it's that last line that's caused some discussion with council.
Okay, Ms. Nash King.
Thank you, sir. With that being said, Ms. Davis, a city council member cannot miss 2 council meetings in a row. And if that person do, he or she may no longer be on the council.
Is it 2 or 3?
I think
It's
it's
three
It's
consecutive.
3 in a row. So if they don't want to apologize and they feel like, okay, well, I didn't do that, I don't think it's right for me to have to apologize, how do they rebuttal? I see the punishment, but if I feel like, who do I rebuttal to?
I think it would be when the discussion is going on about the letter of violation, because it would be council passing a resolution for this letter of violation, and there would be discussion, and I think that the council member who's the subject of the matter could give their side then. But it's really, this is purely up to council and how you
Right.
want to enforce.
I don't
your
have a
rules.
problem with it, but it is a lot, our procedures, we're just learning our procedures, and I know for a fact, we all overtalk each other. So you really violate it if you do that. So to what extreme? So are we talking about to the extreme, like someone just go off on someone, threaten them, curse them? Do it fall in this category, or is it just anything? So
It
we
would-
can be writing letters all day.
Right, it would be up to a majority of the council to decide. So I would hope that it wouldn't be for minor infractions. I would hope that it would be for egregious behavior, and I think that that's what council would do. I have faith that y'all would do that. But Sure, as long, if a quorum of council wants to decide that a particular action is a violation, then that would be your right.
What legality have we have here? Because I think this is one of those things that, you know, if you're elected representative and you don't apologize, you know, who are we to say you can't come back?
That's not HOA?
You know, that sounds like we're digging a legal hole there just because.
Sergeant Arm's going to be busy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, well, I was elected, you know? And it's like, as council, this is a protocol, it's not a legal thing, and I have a right to be here, so.
It doesn't say they can't attend, it just says they can't participate.
So the purpose of us being here today, Mr. Mayor.
I'm getting the feeling that y'all don't like this provision, so we don't have to discuss it anymore. If y'all want to take it out, that's fine. What do you want to do instead?
So what's the purpose of having procedures and there's no accountability?
What is the legal, yeah, I think we need to figure out what is the legal.
Accountability.
What are the legals as far as Robert's rules? You know, how do you handle somebody legally? Not like this, you know, it's like, I'm sure you can still do a letter, you know, that's not a problem there, you know, we give them a letter. But that part about making them apologize, that's where we're gonna have
That's
issues.
Yeah, I agree with that one.
You know,
I know there's often been discussion if a council member has acted in a way that several council members feel is inappropriate. What can we do about it? Can we censure the council
Censure,
member?
there you go.
And we don't have any sort of censure procedure in the protocol. So this would be where council, if you want to put a censure procedure in here, this is where it would go. And I feel like the way that it's written with the letter of violation, that is a censure type provision. That's where
That's
you get
fine.
your chance to say, what you did is inappropriate, it's in violation of the rules that we all adopted, it's not right.
When a council member, going back to Nash King, Mrs. Nash King's comment about missing 3, is that something that we created, or is that something that's legally,
That's in the charter.
that's in the charter?
But again, they would be present if they wanted to be, they just couldn't participate, the way this is written.
So they could sit at the table but don't talk.
They may be in the hospital.
That still comes down to elected. They're elected.
No, I would need to go back and review that section, but I think it says unexcused absences.
Unapproved.
Okay, we got a couple of questions. Mr. Menke?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the check and balance in the whole thing is the majority of the council approving it. The letter of, I don't know if you want to call it admonishment or illustrating what occurred, and that it's, you know, I don't know what the language would even be. But I think the majority of the council is what's going to make sure that it's not, you know, two people having a disagreement, and therefore they want to write letters on each other or that type of thing. So I don't see if that's a problem. Asking someone to apologize, though, I mean, in the legal world, they always come to an agreement and both don't admit wrongdoing. You know, that's pretty
So
standard.
are we in agreement to take that out?
Oh, yeah. I take the letter out.
So take that apology part out.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Rivera?
can I use your name?
Sure, certainly.
You got Mr. Kilpatrick, his District 3. We give him 20 letters. You sit back and laugh. He represents District 3. District 3 put him in there. He owns District 3, whatever he does, he owns it to that district. I don't think that letter's going to do any harm to any one of us, because you could give me 20 letters if you want to. You can't take that away from me. I'm legally voted by the city of Killeen, technically. So I'm entitled to sit in here. So I would take that letter out, to be honest with you. I think that's going to create more problems.
Mr. Harris?
I would basically say that, of course, the apology, I mean, I wouldn't try to make anybody lie. I mean, I'm not gonna, if I didn't think I did anything wrong, I'm not gonna lie and say I did. You know, I don't think, you know, you should try to force anybody to get in that position. But at the same time, even with the letter of reprimand, because even as you know, being the mayor, because I know y'all sent me a copy of the older policy that we had in protocols that was in there. And I know in there it said, if the mayor sees a disturbance going on whatsoever with a council member, the mayor can direct the person to if they see it being disruptive or whatever, the mayor can say, okay, okay, go ahead and stop talking now. If the person keeps talking, the mayor warns them, then the mayor can actually, or the council can actually direct the mayor to have that person escorted out if they have to. If that person is just going crazy and just doing whatever, then either you or the majority of the council can petition you to have that person, removed from the meeting. And if it gets to that point right there, to where somebody's just, just going crazy or whatever, and they won't listen to you or respect anybody, then of course, at that point in time, then I think the majority of the council would say, hey, it was your fault, the person who was doing it. And so, but I think you can maintain at that point. Now, the question, of course, comes in, what happens if somebody just tries to do it repeatedly? At that point in time, just as you have in the charter about, 3 unexcused meetings, and so forth, and, and things like that, then at some point in time, there may be something in there about, okay, what if you have legitimate, or I'll put it this way, if you are, athletics-wise, it says if a referee calls a technical foul on you, a coach, then that coach, after a certain amount of time, has to go in for counseling with the athletic director. And then if it happens after that, some more after that, then that coach can be, it's a business, this is the business, but that coach can be terminated. But on the council level, what will be done after things happen so many times? And that's the issue that has to be addressed on that particular portion. Because I think right now, with the group we have right now, I don't think that we'll really get to that point, honestly, to tell you the truth.
Well, and you got to read that paragraph above it, because it's not the mayor that decides. It says determination of violation shall be made by majority vote. So it's through the council. So it's not that just because I think you're at it, so you still have to vote. And if you vote and say he violated, then the mayor, you're voting so that the mayor can give him a letter. So it's not automatic that just because you did something, it's like, Mrs. Nash King.
Thank you, sir, and I don't want to prolong this, but I just think that everybody is right on what they're saying, but we're adults.
There we go.
And I just don't think we even need that. I think we need to conduct ourselves in a professional manner, or if Mrs. Davis can go somewhere else and found where another city council had a policy of enforcement, that they really enforced it and it worked, I can agree. But right now, we can be here all night talking about this, because you cannot make a grown person do what they don't want to do. And if I come in here, which I'm not going to do, but if I represent my district, who is anybody on this table to say I cannot speak for my district? You just cannot put something in place and think that a person is going to go by because they have a letter or whatever. It could be something, I just don't think, I agree with Mr. Harris. I don't think it's going to get to that point, and I just think that we don't really need that paragraph.
So
That's just my opinion.
we just want to delete everything in the highlight, is that what it is?
Yes.
Leave that part of, it says a determination by the council, leave that part. I
Correct,
think that's a good
correct,
part. And then
correct.
based on whatever penalty we want to give
Right.
them, so
We'll determine it at that time.
is
sir.
everybody okay with that?
No,
I move-
discussion, I haven't
Mr. Kilpatrick?
I haven't spoke, but even the paragraph right above that, it's not the majority of the council. The determination of violations shall be made by the majority vote of those city council members present during the deliberation. So if there are 4 people there, you exclude the member who is being determined against, so it is 2 out of 3. It is not a quorum. It's during the city council is present during the deliberation. You can have 4 as a quorum. You take the individual out that they don't like, what he or she did, and then it's a majority of the 3 of the deliberation. So then 2 of those can say, yeah, I want that a letter of violation, I want to put it in the file, and he will, no. I agree with everybody else in this deal. There is provisions to take care of me in the charter. It's called a recall. The citizens in my district can recall me if they think that I'm being out of order and I'm obnoxious or whatever.
So we take that one out too? Yes, Ms. Fleming, I'm sorry, go ahead. Say your piece. Amen.
With everybody, I think we need to strike the whole thing out, and it won't be any problem. Because I think, like everybody said, we're grown, we're over 21.
So-
We should have the option. If we want to do this, like Mr. Rivera said, we can get all the letters we want, but I was elected by District 1, they're the only ones that will seat me out of this seat. So let's take it out.
So no policy enforcement, so whether we do this or not, nothing happens.
7:20 becomes 7:10, 7:30 becomes 7:20.
I believe that we as a council should come together if something do like ridiculous get out of control, and we should vote, like, hey, you might need to step down a meeting, but come and just sit over there or something. I agree on that, but.
So then we leave maybe the first paragraph. It says, if council members of this body believe something's been violated, the topic shall be placed on a meeting agenda following the procedures established. I don't know.
Okay, I'll take that.
Is that okay?
Yeah, for me, yeah.
So if something happens, we have to put it on the agenda item. So take everything out except the first paragraph.
And it will be public. Not
Because you have to have some, why are we having this if we're not even,
Right, we got one now. Make a
we got to
motion.
have some kind of,
Second.
because when this started, I think that was the whole comment why it took 4 months. Because somebody said, why are we doing this? We don't need it. And after all of this, we're back to square one.
Well, and there have been multiple questions throughout. How are we enforcing this? How are we enforcing this? Well, this was how we were enforcing it, but
And what we're agreeing to by signing this every year is we're kind of enforcing ourselves, we're policing ourselves. That's what it really is, because you guys said it, there's really no way you can enforce it. But by agreeing this, you're agreeing that, we're policing ourselves. We create rules for the citizens, and I don't think we're anybody special that, we can't police ourselves. And it's like, well, you can't tell me what to do.
Mr. Mayor, I make a
So,
motion that.
everything
the
is strike-
First paragraph in 710 be retained, all other be deleted.
Okay.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion, Mr. Menke.
I just had one thing to say about this. I think there does need to be some kind of, I think the reason why this is in here, and I think what it's going to cover is something that's just, it's like high crimes and misdemeanors in the Constitution. It would be something so egregious and so obvious that it would require the council action. I don't think it would have really anything to do with the day-to-day operations of a council throughout its
Something
whole
egregious, we'll just take you to jail or something, you're,
year. Well,
Mr. Mayor,
okay. But I hear what you're saying, you're good. Mr. Rivera,
for me, it's very simple. If him and we get into conversation, we get out of hand, the only thing you got to do is take both of us out there and talk to us. That's it. That reminds me of Mr. Hancock. We had a problem one-on-one. Mr. Hancock would take you out there and tell you a little bit about how you conduct yourself in a meeting. I mean, I'm not going to respond to you. I'm sorry. You're my friend. You're the city mayor, but I represent the city when I sit over here. I represent the city. I don't answer to neither one of you. Let's talk about really what it is, because this is what it is. If we have a problem one-on-one, we should take one-on-one out there and talk one-on-one with you. Well, this sounds like I got my kids in my house. You can't do this, you can't do that. Let me get both of you together. I'm not a baby. Look, I'm 67 years old. I don't need this.
okay, I think we're getting away from the point of this. This is a thing of respect, it's not like a law, we come here together to kind of have a guidance of how to respect each other, not how to tell each other what to do. So that's all this is. Look at it as a courtesy document or something, if you don't want to follow the rules or something.
Oh, I follow the rules. I follow the rules. That's no problem. But I don't need it in black and white. If you don't do this, say I'm you. Let's do it again. That's what you're doing. That's what we're doing. I mean, I agree with the protocol business. But the reason I don't agree is, if we have a situation, you don't need the whole city council to take care of it. Let that person and I take care of it. That's between us. And I tell you what, and I'll give you a good example. In 2007, I had a big argument up here, and that's not a surprise. I had a big argument with Mr. Wells. Big argument. We turned out to be best friends. Because we went up there and by us.
So can we put that in there? If you have an argument, you become best friends. Can we do that?
Back to you.
Okay, that's the thing you got to do.
Motion and a second. Call for the vote.
Okay, we got all those in favor of
Restate it?
deleting everything except that first paragraph. The first paragraph, if a council member believes policy has been violated, then it should be placed on the agenda, whatever. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed? 3-3, what? All right, it's in. That's like you guys said. So that's it, move on.
Leave the first paragraph.
Just the
remove
first
rest.
paragraph.
Okay.
Next.
What's that question?
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, it's not it. It's not it yet. It's not it.
Wait,
I got
wait,
more.
wait.
I got more. I do. I got more.
Mr. Harris.
Okay, let's see, I was gonna look at, 7:30 down there. And 7:30, it says, "The city attorney assisted the mayor as a resource to confer with and act as an advisor of interpreting the city council's adopted governing standards and expectations. The city manager, city attorney, nor state staff, nor any staff member is responsible for enforcing these protocols and guidelines." But I was gonna say about, as far as the protocols, I mean, if we start, I was gonna make this thing, it's basically saying that if we start veering off left or right, or this way or that way, or if we start violating some of the Robert's Rules of Orders, I was gonna just make the request that, just jump in.
And I do, but I'm not going to be the one to say, Mr. Harris, you're in violation.
Okay.
Because that's not my role. It's what we do now. It's what I did today with the mayor. I make a suggestion, and then it's up to y'all to either follow that suggestion or not.
Yeah, and the city attorney is like the parliamentary. is that
Right,
what you
right, that's
call
what I'm
it?
saying,
So
yeah.
she guides the mayor, so,
Right,
and
I'm
I
saying- that's what I'm
don't
saying,
know all that
yeah.
stuff, so
Yeah,
I
yeah.
turn to her a lot.
That's what I'm saying, I mean, if you see somebody doing something, just, I mean, I don't know if you can say, excuse me, Mr. Mayor, point of order,
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Find a way to get his attention.
Oh, yeah, because,
She's the attorney, even though some of us act like we are attorneys.
I play one
I
on
know I'm
TV.
not, so.
Okay. Let's see, then, like I said, last week when I went back and found my notes, I just had a few more things that I wanted to do some house cleaning on that I had in my notes here, because I wanted to make sure that and this is jumping back up to the beginning, actually, and there's not many there, but it says in 1-30A, and of course, 1-30A, section 1-30A.
Man, we're going way back. We thought we were
No,
past that.
But I know, but I got my notes now. So, so now, all right. So on that part right there, just clarifying, because I'm just clarifying. What was our final decision on the?
On page 1.
Where does it say here? As far as let's say 130A. Yep. Say regular meetings. Regular meetings. Wondering if the city council takes official action. They're not. Let's see. Was that okay? But anyway, I'll read this. We have 130A. And what I have written down is the mayor should have no unilateral authority that falls outside the mayor's scope of emergency situations to call special meetings. We're talking about the special meetings again, and because I know that when I was talking about, and I'm trying to remember what we decided on that, but at the same time, that's why I'm coming back to address it just a little bit. But what did we decide finally? Because as far as the special meetings, the mayor having authority to determine those, should that be saying here that I think it should be not be unilateral, but be a council decision, simply because. And now here's the reason: simply because that in some cases puts an unfair advantage to, because we're the elected representatives, and that. And I'm not speaking lowly of you when I'm saying this. I'm just trying to keep everything level and working in an equitable way. But like I said, the mayor shouldn't have that unilateral authority to call that, because now in dealing with the policies and protocols, now the policies and protocols, the old ones y'all sent to me, are those going to be completely thrown out the window, and these are going to become the new ones? Okay.
But it's in the charter.
Okay.
There's nothing
Okay,
we
okay,
can
I'm
do
just-
about it.
yeah.
It's
Now-
very clear in the charter.
Oh,
The
no,
mayor has
trust.
that right.
I think even the governor has
Yeah.
that authority. You can
Yeah,
call
'cause
the
now-
houses, so I mean, the
Because I mean, y'all know I read the charter on that part.
governor can call special
Yeah.
meetings anytime.
Okay, but that does the governor though. But like I said, even with us, and that's the authority that he's given by the state constitution though. But because actually altogether it really doesn't. But that's why I keep challenging like I do.
Can we make
But,
it
but-
official? Can
but-
we, just for Mr. Harris' sakes, take a vote or make a motion or something on that so that, you know, we can.
Because, no, we already voted on that motion, didn't we? No, we voted on that motion. Okay.
Point of order,
But I'm-
point of order.
No, ma'am, no, no, 'cause I said I had questions, but when they said at the same time,
Hold
we
on,
said at the same
hold on.
time. Yeah, so.
Point of order, hold
okay,
on.
so, But
Did-
I.
Do we have a second on that adjournment? I didn't hear it, just a
Ma'am,
second.
I mean, sir, but I said something the same time they did.
Okay,
But you recognize me, but you recognize me. But I'm being overshadowed right now, but, you know.
go ahead,
breaking
continue.
protocol, so I have the
Continue,
floor.
continue,
Okay, thank
continue.
you. All right, so
You're
that's.
going to be the first one that we have to put on here.
Oh, no,
Let her.
That's gonna be her. I was talking and I just got interrupted.
Go
But now,
ahead.
but as far as it goes though, like I said, so that was the first thing right there. And then, like I said, I don't know if we ever made a final decision on that particular thing, but then again on, as far as requesting agenda items, I know we talked about it only being one council member that can request an agenda item now, but we never discussed whether or not the mayor can put one on there by himself as well without the approval of the council. And the reason I'm against that right there, and that's in Division 2A, Division 2, Section 2A, and the reason I'm against that one right there is basically because just as the council says I remember Kathy saying it, just in case the council doesn't want to hear something that one of the other council members has to bring forward, and you've all agreed to it, okay, then y'all can, when we bring it up for an agenda item, y'all can vote it down. Okay, and that's based on what you want to hear. So the same thing equitably needs to be applied to the mayor, because the same thing needs to be applied to the mayor because we're all elected officials, and at that point right there, the mayor doesn't need to get that extra lift right there because we're the elected officials that represent the city. He's the figurehead.
Mayor is not,
Huh?
the mayor is not
What's that?
elected official that represents the city.
Well, I know what I'm saying. Even as we hear elected officials, the council members, the mayor is elected as a figurehead, but yet the elected members of the council
Can we
are the ones
just
that-
take a vote, that way make it short, so
Well, I
on
mean,
those
I'm
items there?
I'm just trying to make a point right now, though. But like I said, so if the elected officials, which are the council members,
Make your point.
that's what I'm doing, sir, that's what I'm doing. If the elected officials, 'cause I know which way y'all gonna vote anyway, so I'm gonna make my point. So if the elected officials, okay, aren't allowed to, I mean, if elected officials say, if I don't want to hear something that you had to bring forward, then I'm gonna vote not to hear it. But then the mayor comes forward and says, I have something, and we have no choice, that's being hypocritical.
Council can
Okay.
always vote at any time. If a majority of any item that's on the agenda, a majority of council always has that right
Well,
to say.
I'm saying the mayor should have to bring something before the council as well to have put up for discussion.
That's what 120B says.
That the mayor should have to bring it up for discussion?
It says the mayor or two council members, which we changed to read to one
One, yeah.
council member, so that makes him the same. Mayor, one council member, may direct the city manager in writing using the attached form to place an item on the next available agenda.
Okay, so even when the mayor brings something up, then we get to vote on it,
Yes.
whether we want to hear it or not.
Council always has that
Okay.
authority on
I just
any
wanted to make
item
sure of
that's
that
on the
because
agenda.
I don't know if we were so specific in that part. And, let's see.
Okay,
Okay, that's, I think that's it.
so do we
think
need to
that's-
make these
yeah.
things official?
Yes, sir, we need to go ahead.
Everybody that wants to, and this is for the city managers and the staffs, because sometimes we want to clarify that can the mayor call special meetings? And so that's what I need you guys to either, Mrs. Nash King.
I'm sorry. On that issue, I don't think there's anything in protocol that can change the charter.
It's on the charter, so we're good.
The charter says the mayor.
Let me find it
or
for
a
you.
majority of
So,
council
Mr. Harris,
Yeah, oh,
we don't need no emails then, no more.
oh, no, you can.
About,
Oh, I got
every
'em.
time I call a meeting. Now, can the mayor make at any time? Can I set a time? Because I get emails, Mr. Harris, every time I
Oh,
change
no,
it from
they
5
can-
o'clock, we get bombarded by emails
Not without
that,
council approval?
Mrs. Nash King.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that the mayor has the authority to call a special meeting at any time.
Oh, not a date. Okay, point of order. Point of order. we already had the motion on the floor, but after me to adjourn the meeting, so.
She called it
She has-
back.
But she has.
Hold up,
oh,
hold up, hold
but
up,
she-
hold
But she has to officially withdraw her motion, and then before.
She did.
She did?
She did. It's on the
Okay,
recorder.
okay, okay. All right, I'm just making sure, okay, I was missing that, because, I was making sure, I was trying to stay focused on what I was saying.
Okay, this is all for Mr. Harris. Mr. Harris, so we need to clarify, because we want to stop all these emails we get about every time we change the city. So Mrs. Dash, go ahead.
I move that the mayor has the authority to call special meetings on any time or day as he sees fit.
You took my fidgeter. That's
Second the motion.
Okay, all those in favor
I
of,
forgot to ask a question.
even though it's on the charter, but we're talking here about
And
time.
it's already in here. It's already in here.
Mayor asked to do it, so
Yeah, we want to,
But see,
So keep it in here.
it's already in there, so we're keeping it in there.
Okay.
All those in favor, please raise your right hand.
we don't need to vote on it then, because it's.
All right, all those opposed, motion carries 5-1. We don't want to see no more emails every time I have a meeting. Don't,
Oh, it's in the charter, though, 5 PM is in the charter, though, I saw it.
okay. Start times? No, that's what we were just voting.
That was calling a special meeting.
No, she said start. Did you say start time?
Start
Yeah, that's
times?
why I
Okay.
was saying, I told her,
Got it.
it's in the charter, but we want,
I can let me redo it.
Disenfranchisement.
I move that the mayor has authority to start any meeting, whether it be a regular meeting or a special meeting on any time or day.
Call for the question after a second
any second.
question.
Go ahead.
Okay, now, I'm going to say this, and I'm not going to lie to you. I'm going to put it on Facebook. Now, because in the charter, I know it does say 5 PM, because I read it a bunch of times. I couldn't find that last time, but it's in there, 5 PM.
No, it
But, I know, okay, but anyway, I'll look for it again. But as far as it goes, when we talk about any time, then my recommendation, of course, is always start after a regular council meeting or a regular workshop, or if you want to do something like that, not early, because, again, there are times where that disenfranchises not just citizens, but even council members who have regular jobs, i.e. myself at times. And so people can and will at times perceive that as a weapon of sorts. Now, and so now, well, wait, I'm still talking, sir, I'm still talking. I'm still talking.
Hold on, hold on.
This was a question, I'm still talking. And see, that's what I mean right there. You're trying to use that as a weapon to try to get silence the elected representative of the city. And one thing that I know as far as some of my constituents, they express concern with early workshops and early meetings. They do. Now, with that, as I said, if you wanted to call a special meeting on an alternative day, and at 5 o'clock, and the council agreed to it, then we can do that. That's fine with me. But
Okay, we got a motion and a second,
as far as,
so
but as
I
far,
know.
yeah, but as far as calling it early, then not only, okay, do you of course omit sometimes the working council member, but sometimes you will disenfranchise the citizens, and I will let them know.
Call for the vote.
Can I
Call
ask
for
a
the vote.
question?
It works both ways.
Well, yeah.
Let's
It
go
works
for the
both
vote.
ways. Hold on.
Okay, but go ahead and vote.
It works both ways, because you're doing the people's work too, and
And we are, and that's they elected
Sometimes
us to
you
have
have to
meetings
be
at
here
regular
more than
times.
required, so.
Yeah, because we went through that discussion already, though. But
with
as far as it
that,
goes,
all
let's
those
go
in
ahead and vote.
favor of, mayor can call a meeting at any time.
I'll make
so,
sure I mention all your names, just to be fair this time.
Any meeting, any type of meeting, anytime. All those raise your right hand. All those opposed, motion carries 5-1. Motion by Mrs. Nash, second by Mr. King to adjourn. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Mayor,
We are adjourned.
do you want this, are you ready to vote on it at your next regular meeting?
Vote on it the next regular meeting. Bring it forward.